Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, People in Konoha. Look at me, Demacia. Chapter 41, Hyuga Clan. The name of this Konoha clan, who is called a descendant of the Six Paths, is like a kind of glory that can make people look up to, but few people know how much unwillingness and hatred is hidden behind this name. For Hyuga, who pays more attention to old traditions and clan status, strength and talent cannot determine everything about a clan member. Sometimes the time of birth and the destiny that is determined right after birth are simply like a curse that cannot be changed. For Hyuga Schwerin, who was born in the branch house, this kind of coercive will is simply a disaster, and what's even more unfortunate is that she is only a girl. In the world of ninjas, men with strong strength generally enjoy a higher status, which also means that as a woman, she needs to work harder than others. It is completely unimaginable that in Hyuga, where the hierarchical system has reached the extreme, the branch houses live such a life. The Zong family is still so aloof, but the branch house can only crawl outside, and even its own life is firmly controlled by others, in hand. Who would be willing to have their fate forcibly determined at birth? Who is willing to put his life and everything in the hands of others? Who would be willing that all efforts and struggles cannot be worth that little curse seal? Therefore, from the moment she became sensible, Shui Ran understood her future destiny. Even though the future would always be immersed in a dense black mist, she still forced herself to keep fighting. She forced herself to set the most demanding goals for herself. However, no matter how much effort she put in, no matter what achievements she achieved, she still could not get recognition from others, and the hateful curse mark still hung firmly above her head like a giant sword, so heavy that she couldn't breathe. She slowly adapted to this kind of life. Even if the future was not bright, she walked in confusion. Until she met that boy, the boy who still greeted her with a smile no matter how hard and tired she was. His name is Konosuke. He has a weird name and a weird personality. Although he greets people with a smile every day, the loneliness and helplessness hidden in his heart turn into an indifferent distance that firmly blocks others out. This is a very strange person. He has great power but works harder than anyone else. He has no image at all day long. He seems to have no scruples about anything, but he is never reckless, as if some things should be done. Just do it if you should do it, don't do it if you shouldn't do it. Everything is so indifferent yet so persistent. Calm and peaceful, indifferent and persistent. Sometimes Shui Ran was very envied his freedom and his relief. Every time she got together with him, his natural attitude would make Shui Ran forget about her own identity. Can always temporarily let go of the huge stone in my heart. She didn't know when she started, but she began to look forward to the days when she would meet him every day, and when he would shout at the gate of the clan. The wounded have probably been transferred. The veins in the corners of Hyuga Schwerin's eyes slowly shrank. She had already seen a large number of ninjas coming here, and the forehead protectors they wore were the logo of Cloud Shinobi. Is this a trap at all? A breeze blew by, blowing her long black hair and passing over the bandaged wounds and pale cheeks. Since arriving at this base, Gang Yuanshou and Qian Chengyi were temporarily appointed and assigned the task of transferring the wounded. However, due to her serious injury and some obsessions in her heart, she was left to recuperate. She was not stupid. She knew exactly what would happen if she stayed, but she still decided on this choice. The scene of Konosuke hugging her and running away in embarrassment remained in her mind for a long time. Shui Ran, when the war is over, go back to your hometown and get married. This sentence kept echoing in her mind, and from time to time it evoked a happy smile on the girl's lips. Then the smile gradually turned cold. Forget it, Konosuke. She murmured softly, my fate is controlled by others, and I will only drag you down. Your future should be brighter, right? Then, she smiled, but it was so heartfelt. She picked up the forehead protector that symbolized Konoha with one hand, and tied it gently on her forehead. This is probably the only time I can decide my own destiny. Konosuke, we will meet in the next life. A girl's upper body was covered with thick bandages, facing the approaching Cloud Shinobi, like a snow lotus in the wind, standing upright and unyielding. Yo, Schwerin. The familiar voice sounded in her ears like a hallucination, that kind of lazy and naughty voice. When she heard it in the girl's ears, her slender body couldn't help but trembled, and her whole body showed a trace of confusion. In this situation, the sound is so calming. She slowly turned her head, and a glimmer of life flashed through her lifeless pupils again, filled with surprise, expectation and joy. You shouldn't have come. I know. Konosuke nodded seriously, but his eyes were full of determination. I said, I want to be your umbrella. He said this, but his tone was gentler than ever before. You're just an idiot, she whimpered, feeling bad all over. For a very strong girl, she really didn't want to show her fragile side in front of her lover. You step back first, he said in a deep voice, staring at the outside of the base, where figures of all sizes began to loom. In the end, Kotobi could not bear the cruel torture from the new era. Although he was a jonin, he was not as good as the old jonin. He only knew a rough idea about this mission. Even so, for Konosuke and the two of them, it was not possible. You may not be able to guess anything based on these. Why are there no Konoha ninjas in our own war zone? Why are Cloud Shinobi exploring more and more ninjas? Why would they find such a hidden casualty area? Cloud Shinobi's actions directly confirmed Konosuke's worst guess. Judging from the strength of the troops they have dispatched, it is far from being as simple as a small team. This was more brutal than any previous siege. It seemed that the entire Cloud Shinobi backup force had been sent here, or even more. On the contrary, this confirmed a certain guess in Hinosuke's mind. Everything should be just a conspiracy by the higher-ups in Konoha. Speaking of which, fighting against Cloud Shinobi, who is straightforward and mostly mindless, is really. As for the person who pulled this conspiracy, Konosuke can think of it with his toes. The only person in Konoha who doesn't take human life seriously is Danzo, that is, Orochimaru. Both of them are equally bad. Konosuke couldn't help but frown when he thought about this. But Uncle Snake shouldn't be so crazy now, right? His collaboration with Danzo has already begun. Of course, he did not rule out the involvement of other high-level officials in Konoha. After all, the degree of corrosion in Konoha in the later plot was excessive. Konosuke does not agree with the fact that human life is not taken seriously, but is only used as a bargaining chip to measure war. This amount. Someone's words revealed deep helplessness. Although the people gradually charging at this time were some low-level Chunin and his ilk, such a densely packed number made people feel numb. It's weird, the opponent's Jonin should be faster than Genin. Perhaps hearing someone's doubts, Hyuga Schwerin added, Jiraiya-sama has been here before. Konosuke immediately understood. Were you lured away? If Jiraiya led the team to lure away a large number of Jonin before, then it would make sense to leave a group of Genin and Chunin on the battlefield to attack the enemy. But why not get rid of these people together? Too much haste. Where's Minato? A question came. Perhaps in Hyuga's eyes, if Minato was included, their chances of escaping might be greater. Oh, he went to pick up the wounded. After all, his technique is really useful. That's it. Black shadows passed quickly between the branches, and the ninjas of Cloud Shinobi had either cold or crazy expressions on their faces. His eyes were firmly fixed on the well-hidden base not far ahead. They had just received orders to destroy that base at all costs. Konoha's rear base. They looked at the building complex that was getting closer and closer, and a certain kind of fanaticism in their hearts became increasingly difficult to hide. Victory is coming. Ever since a large number of Jonin were intercepted by Konoha's hurried ninjas, they became more and more convinced of this. Getting closer. Sudden, a crimson light flashed, and a kid wearing a Konoha forehead protector appeared in front of them. Come on, stop. Cold and firm words came out of his mouth. If viewed from the air, a young man blocked the way of hundreds of ninjas and faced a team of hundreds of people alone. Such a strong contrast seemed to make people. A surge of heroism was about to surge up in his chest involuntarily. The Cloud Shinobi all stopped one after another. An impenetrable wall seemed to be built around the black-clothed and black-haired young man, but people could not think of any way around it. Bang! He threw a kunai on the ground casually, as if pulling a straight line. If you want to go there. He raised his head, with a smile on his face, then step over my body. The Cloud Shinobi frowned, with solemn expressions on their faces, but they all reached out and took out their weapons. For them who were warlike and admired the strong, this boy had already gained their approval. Regardless of his camp, the young man who dared to stand in front of them single-handedly and speak such bold words without any hesitation deserves respect. Are you being ridiculed by our group? Shinosuke, who did not hesitate to act cool, looked at Cloud Shinobi who had taken out their weapons and prepared for battle, and complained in his heart, "I'm just saying, hey, you guys, are you really taking it seriously? How do you, such a simple person, survive in this deceitful society to this day? But, if that's the case, let's fight." With such complaints in his heart, someone who was inexplicably aroused by the atmosphere suddenly showed a hint of hysterical wildness on his face, and his eyes slowly became firm. Even death can't let them get one step closer to Shui Ran. In the Tower Inn, boom, a powerful momentum burst out from someone's body, and a strong fighting spirit appeared on his face. In this situation, one man must be brave enough to stand in front of 10,000 men. Kazuki's firepower is at full blast, and the battle is about to begin. Cloud Shinobi on the opposite side looked at this powerful aura and secretly sighed at the strength of this brat. At the same time, his face couldn't help but become a little more solemn again. Then he seemed to realize that he could no longer let him build up his morale like this, and immediately rushed towards Shinosuke with his sword. Someone who was standing with a knife did not give up. The lightning-fast knife stabbed directly into the chest of a Cloud Shinobi who rushed forward. When the first blood flower rose, Shinosuke's first battle finally began. On the battlefield, in this fast-paced hand-to-hand combat, you are not allowed to think about tactics, and you are not allowed to form seals and release ninjutsu. The real success is the direct cutting of the sharp blade and the flesh by virtue of your own blood. There is a saying that is right: a ninja who has actually been on the battlefield is incomparable to an ordinary ninja, even if this ninja has performed countless missions. Anyone who has actually been on the battlefield knows that it is a meat grinder. Even if you are as witty as a demon and even if you move coquettishly, if you really go to the battlefield, you are guaranteed to be knifed and killed at the next moment. After all, this is a straightforward and pure place. Konosuke walked through the crowd at high speed with a cold face, and the small shield around him was already on standby, spinning around him, flashing and extinguishing. Although the small shield can protect him from some damage, there are so many Cloud Shinobi, but fortunately there is only a small area around him, otherwise a stabbing from one person would be enough for him. He dodged and made full use of his own advantages, trying to get relatively minor injuries at the fastest speed. He held the Chunin sword resolutely and decisively. Under his skillful movements, a cloud of blood kept flying, and each one was alive. Life disappeared in his hands. It seems that Konosuke seems to be invincible at this time, but he knows it in his heart. Although these weak genin can be easily dealt with, if he is delayed here, he may not even be able to wait for reinforcements to arrive, and he will be eaten alive. But what of that? He couldn't retreat. There was something most precious behind him that he needed to guard. Judgment. Someone turned around and swung the blade in his hand diagonally, quickly forming an indestructible blade wheel. At this time, it was like a real meat grinder, causing waves of bloodshed. Judgment's effect of ignoring unit volume is fully reflected here. No matter how the group of ninjas intercept it, no one can stop Konosuke unless he is willing. The young man swept through the crowd like this. Even if there were countless swords piercing him, he would not stop because he needed to buy some time. Konoha's reinforcements should be arriving soon. The battle continues. Konosuke, looking at the young man in front of him who was fighting for her, Hyuga couldn't help but feel a little hazy in his clear white eyes. Her voice was still very weak, and she could not even hear the strength and indifference of the past. At this time, a certain persistence and belief that she had held for many years seemed to be completely injected into the young man. At this moment, Hyuga Schwerin suddenly changed her mind. She didn't want this young man to die like this so strongly. No, absolutely not. He is Konoha's genius, and he has a brighter future. There is no need for him, and he absolutely cannot die here with himself, Hyuga's branch house. Go quickly. Go quickly. She wanted to shout loudly, but she was afraid that it would distract him and cause her to accidentally die here. But while she was panicking, the young man in the crowd seemed to feel her thoughts. Suddenly looking back, a smile flashed across his cold and bloody handsome face. Hyuga Schwerin has never seen such a bright smile, at least never on Konosuke's face. It is as warm and not dazzling as the morning sun, but with a strange feeling, it is a kind of unwavering protection. Hyuga Schwerin laughed softly, and crystal tears flowed from her white pupils. Even so, she still smiled happily. I would like to be your umbrella. She remembered Kinosuke's words, clenched her fists, and looked at the young man in front of her who was fighting bloody battles for her, but her heart was no longer shaken. Kinosuke, I would like to be the hand holding the umbrella handle. Whenever, until death, never let go. If you die, I will follow your footsteps. Since we can't be together in life, it would be good to die together. The girl just stared ahead blankly, making an eternal vow in her heart. This love born out of war is poignant and pure. Poof! A stream of blood burst out from his back. Kinosuke ignored him and reversed the handle of the knife in his hand. A trajectory passed from behind and killed the person who attacked him. Then his whole body turned mysteriously to avoid the oncoming attack. The incoming slash raised the blade again with the force of rotation. PFF'd. After all, this kind of katana is not a sword that feels comfortable to use. Galen's skills seemed to be free of charge and he used them one after another. As soon as the CD reached, he would appear on the battlefield and take away the lives of some ninjas one after another. With such a super limit explosion, even if Kinosuke's strength and physical fitness are greatly improved by merging two life stars, he may not be able to continue fighting for too long. In a normal duel, Galen and Katarina's skills are only used as a last-ditch auxiliary attack. How can they be like him now, who can point out every move for free? The energy in the body is consumed quickly, and even the entire physical fitness is also rapidly consumption. Now these ninjas have adapted to his style of play and have begun to use tactics for effective defense and counterattack. Cloud Shinobi's casualties gradually decreased, and correspondingly, the wounds on Shinobi's body began to increase. It seems it's time to use Katarina's ability, but with that kind of shunpo that keeps flashing, I'm afraid I can only hold on. 5 minutes. After all, energy consumption and damage across space are also a big burden for Kinosuke. But 5 minutes should be enough. This reinforcement must arrive in time, otherwise Lousy will really have to deal with this. Kinosuke spat out a mouthful of blood, and a crimson light flashed through. The Cloud Shinobi attacking around them were unable to react in time, and their attacks failed one after another. They stopped their movements in a hurry and immediately began to explore the boy's location. He's here, but this reminder was a little too late. The next moment, Shinobi's figure appeared in a relatively weakly guarded position of Cloud Shinobi, and then he swung his sword down like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Several more Cloud Shinobi fell down with unwilling looks, and then someone threw a kunai with crimson light in his hand, jumping one after another among the Cloud Shinobi. This move is simply a magical skill to replenish troops, Kinosuke thought, and then the crimson light flashed, and the figure disappeared in place again. To be honest, although there are many Cloud Shinobi, because they are spread out over a wide range, there are only a few people fighting against Shinosuke each time. But even so, in the eyes of the Cloud Shinobi, the boy in front of them already looked like a god of death from hell. He actually resisted their attack by himself. The boy who originally thought he would be wiped out quickly has now held back the entire ninja army. We can't let him do this anymore. By the time Konoha's reinforcements arrive, the situation will probably only become more and more unfavorable for them. Kill. A group of ninjas no longer besieged Kinosuke, but turned around and ran towards the camp. However, the next moment, crimson light flashed again, and blood suddenly spurted out from the necks of the two people closest to Cloud Shinobi. A figure blocked their path. I said, if you want to go there, please be sure to kill me first. He showed no intention of retreating. His right arm was dripping with blood, but someone took the opportunity to stab him because he had hurriedly activated Shunpo. The Cloud Shinobi were silent. Have you lost your mind? Does this arrogant kid really want to intercept the entire ninja army by himself and sacrifice his life for nothing? However, correspondingly, Kinosuke in front of him always had a faint smile on his face. Human, after all, you always have to fight for the most precious things once or twice. Swish, swish, swish. The sound of kunai flying filled the sky. The Cloud Shinobi no longer hesitated. Now they had no choice but to kill the boy in front of them as quickly as possible and rush to the camp. Because they also have their own mission. The large-scale kunai failed for a while. This kind of attack was completely useless to Kinosuke who possessed Shunpo. However, their target is not Kinosuke at all. After someone dodged, another wave of ninjas broke out from the ninja army and rushed towards the camp. After all, the road leading to the camp is very wide. In order to complete the task, any means can be used. For ninjas, the Bushido spirit is all vain when faced with the task. The Cloud Shinobi's desperate charge made Konosuke tired of dealing with it. He was a little worried at this time, as if he was a lone wolf with nameless chains. Katarina's means that were only suitable for offense were used by him for defense, but their power was not enough. It's been greatly reduced. Even so, as each Cloud Shinobi charged, crimson light flashed past his eyes, and he suddenly felt that his sight was being pulled higher and higher. In just a moment, it seemed that he had completed several turns in the air. Headless corpses fell slowly one after another. This was the last scenery in his eyes. Passing over each throat one by one, Konosuke's ninja sword drew thrilling straight lines in the air. Then, not even a trace of bloodline was left on the cold blade surface. Every time it's a one-hit kill. Under such continuous attacks regardless of consumption and life, Konosuke's body was constantly enduring inhuman torture. But the look in his eyes became more and more determined. Even if his body began to be unable to bear the huge load, he still gritted his teeth and remained silent, and his killing efficiency would not be reduced because of this. The sudden surprise attack and the continuous killings did not stop the Cloud Shinobi. They also have their own way of ninja and their own determination. The torrent of ninja will never be blocked by such a small grain of sand. Although the bloody reality spread in front of them has always been a silent warning, they never back down. In the ninja world, no one is right or wrong. If we really want to make a comparison, the only one who is wrong is this world, a world that is cruel, real and full of disputes. After all their actions are just to complete the missions from different camps. The dark and deep forest blocked the sunlight, and at the same time, it may have blocked the hearts of this group of people who were hurriedly walking in the darkness. This is a team of Konoha's wounded troops. Some of them have only minor injuries, while some are so seriously injured that they can only be carried forward slowly on stretchers. Their strength is mixed. There are genin, there are chunin, and there are also a few jonin. It is obvious that most of the jonin are the ones being carried on stretchers. It is undeniable that their injuries are all marks of honor left by protecting the village. The team moved forward in silence, no one wanted to say a word, and a mood called gloom and depression slowly circulated among the team for a long time. Ever since they learned that Cloud Shinobi troops were attacking in large numbers, everyone's hearts were filled with shock and loss. Why is this discreetly hidden base behind Konoha's front known to Cloud Shinobi? Most people contacted some information but vaguely guessed something, but they did not dare to think about it, nor did they want to confirm it. They who were willing to give everything for the village could not and should not accept this established fact. This is probably an error in intelligence. However, the reality that was about to come shattered all the hope they had left in their hearts. Before they could recover from despair, Cloud Shinobi's army had arrived. Who would have imagined that the one who held back Cloud Shinobi's army in the end was actually a genin brat? Everyone is silent. Brush. A golden light flashed, and the team stopped for a moment. They had seen it countless times, but they were no longer surprised by this phenomenon. Minato carried a jonin on his back and put him down gently. This is the last one, please take care of him. Minato's expression was solemn, even a little anxious. He turned around hurriedly, looking like he was going to make another space transfer. Wait, kid, where are you going? Minato turned around, but it was the voice from the jonin just now. Minato remembers this jonin as Nara Shikazumi. The strong wisdom of the Nara family allowed him to become the direct commander of a certain army on the front line, but he was accidentally injured during a battle with Cloud Shinobi and was placed in the injured camp. This time the operation of transferring the wounded was planned by him. And he also has the power that a jonin should have, and he defied all opinions and delayed the transfer until the end. So although Minato was eager to save people, he vaguely felt that the wise man seemed to want to say something. I'm going to support Konosuke. Besides, Schwerin is still in the camp. A firm tone came from Minato's mouth, as if everything was taken for granted. Is that child's name Konosuke? A glimmer of light flashed in Nara's eyes. The young man is formidable, but he is different from his adoptive father. Then he seemed to think of something again. Why don't you rescue that girl first? There was a wry smile on Minato's lips. A girl like Shui Ran was so stubborn that once she had made up her mind, it would be difficult to change her mind. Uncle, do you believe in love? If she were in this situation, Kushina would probably make the same choice as Shui Ran. Nara Luchan was stunned for a moment, but then he laughed dumbly. When the boy was fighting in a bloody battle, there was a white figure at the gate of the camp. No matter that Cloud Shinobi was about to rush in and his life was about to be threatened, that figure remained firm and unyielding. Shift. Is this the love of young people? Sure enough, I am still getting old. Kid, let me ask you, are you afraid of death? Facing Nara's gaze, Minato's eyes were firm and unflinching, afraid. A smile appeared on Nara Shikazumi's lips, but Minato's next words surprised him again. But I'm more afraid of people around me dying. Nara Luchan was silent for a while, and then said, then have you considered that you will die there together? After all, if the village's reinforcements cannot arrive in time. After a pause, he looked directly at Minato with an unprecedented serious expression. Kid, you are very talented. After all, I have never seen second generation's flying thunder god used so perfectly. You are so talented, wouldn't it be a pity if you died in vain? After all, you still have a better future. If you are willing to work hard in the future, even becoming a fourth generation project may not be impossible. Sure enough, the Nara family is worthy of being called wise men. Did you stop me just to talk about these things? Minato was indifferent to these words. He only saw him arranging his ninja tools and turning around to leave. After all, time has been delayed a lot. If he is 1 second late, Kinnisuke will be in danger. Nara looked at Minato with his eyes, as if trying to find the slightest hesitation in his indifferent expression. But he was disappointed. Minato's expression was very sincere and there was no falsehood at all. Then what are you doing for? A hint of admiration flashed in Nara Luchan's eyes, and he continued to ask, is it just friendship? No, it's not just that. Minato answered resolutely, it's not just that, it's also my persistence. His eyes slowly swept across the lifeless team, and finally focused on Gang Yuensho and Qian Chengyi, who were somewhat dodging and fearful. The war took away many things, not just life, but also some things that living people should have had. His voice was a little low, but it was extremely sincere. Some ninjas gradually looked over. Our faith, our spirit, and our indomitability should not go away. Slowly, the team began to quiet down, and more people looked towards Minato. I always thought I was fighting in the village. As if they thought of something, some people's eyes suddenly became more gloomy, with a hint of rejection and disapproval. Nara Luchan saw all this in his eyes, but his brows wrinkled slightly. Minato seemed to be unaware of everyone's expressions and continued, but slowly, I found that my previous determination was wrong. I used to just blindly carry out the orders issued by the superiors, and just work hard to complete these orders. Even so, I thought I was fighting for the village. No, that's wrong. Many ninjas in the team suddenly raised their heads, looking at Minato with confused and panicked eyes. These are all the same thoughts among them. They have done this before and have always thought so. But now that they were rejected by Minato, they couldn't help but feel a little confused. Isn't this just fighting for the village? Looking at the many doubtful eyes, Minato paused and continued, that is just a mechanical and simple execution of orders. Even if you are hurt because of it, you are only making a contribution. This little devil, what he said was merciless and immediately attracted angry looks from everyone. We are all fighting for ourselves. Minato said. Fight for the ideals in your heart, fight for your friends and family, fight for the obsessions in your heart, and even more so for your own way of tolerance. If you still retain a trace of hope in your heart, then even on the battlefield what's the point of dying in battle? So, I am going to rescue Kinnisuke, not for anything else, but for the belief in my heart. Even if I die, it is still valuable. This is my way of ninja. As soon as these words were spoken, many ninjas were shocked. They looked up at the boy who was as warm as the sun. All they could see in his eyes was sincerity, infinite confidence and optimism. The gloomy atmosphere in the team was immediately swept away, and many ninjas couldn't help but smile. I haven't even seen a child understand it yet, and my age is like living like a dog. Gang Yuensho and Senjuichi's eyes flickered, looking at Minato with admiration, but they couldn't help but make certain decisions in their hearts. Remember Konosuke once said this, if a person loses his ideals and beliefs, what's the difference from a salted fish? Minato smiled at everyone, but turned around as if he was about to activate the Flying Thunder God technique. Wait, Nara Shikizumi stopped Minato again. Uncle, do you still want to stop me? Minato turned his back to them, but he had already decided to leave. Of course not. A smile appeared on Nara's face, but he shouted to the team, where are the ninjas of the Nara family? As soon as he finished speaking, several ninjas stood out from the team. Their expressions were serious and their eyes were firm. Although they were more or less injured, it did not prevent them from participating in the subsequent battle. Uncle, you. Minato was slightly surprised. Take them with you. There was pride hidden in Nara Luchan's smile, as if the constant conversation had touched the wound again. He gasped slightly, kid, our Nara family also has our own beliefs. Not just the Nara family. Another shout came, and a ninja walked out of the team. How is it possible to let just one kid steal the show? Konoha hasn't fallen low enough yet to let you brats stand in the way. Yep, ninjas with less serious injuries kept coming forward. Different from the lifeless look just now, their eyes were full of smiles and determination at this time. Everyone. Minato turned his back to everyone for a moment, but his words were choked. It has to be said that little son already has some of the charm of fourth generation in the future. He is so contagious that he used his actions and words to build up a strong force in a short period of time. Not a bad support group. There seems to be a reason for Naruto's powerful mouth escape in the future. This skill has already begun to take shape in his father. The war is still going on, and it is more intense and cruel than before. Both sides showed real fire. Brush. All three Chunins' throats were cut with a knife. Normally, it would be impossible to kill 3 Chunin with one knife. After all, Chunin are not just cabbages left there to be slaughtered by you. But here, everything is impossible. That's right, the person who did it is still that genin brat. The boy from Konoha stared coldly at the enemies gathering in front of him like Shira, but there was no fear on his young face. Although his body was already covered with scars at this time, he was as hideous and terrifying as a bloody man. Hufu. Konosuke gasped hard, the blood on his forehead almost blurring his vision. He didn't know how long he could hold on. 1 second, or 2 seconds. Although there is no clear definition yet, judging from the current physical condition, Konosuke understands that he is at the end of his strength. Even if he suddenly fell down at any next moment, he would not be surprised at all. What really concerned him was whether he died of exhaustion of physical strength in the end, or whether he was beaten to death by many cloud shinobi before that. By the way, if the plot is arranged properly, I really don't want to die. Whether it's for myself or for Shui Ran. He couldn't fall down. If he fell down here, the girl behind him might be killed by the violent cloud shinobi at the first opportunity. Call. He breathed again, but the smell of rust came from his mouth, Tui. If I guessed correctly, his internal organs were bleeding on a large scale, and strong pain accompanied his breathing, making him extremely painful. Ah, is it serious enough? Someone who felt that he had endured all the seemingly impossible sufferings on earth could not help but burst out with a cry. I can't die here no matter what. The exhaustion from the body was whispering in the ears. You need to rest. He dragged heavy steps, his arms were so numb that he could hardly lift them, and the energy in his body was getting anxious. It was as if the fuel tank in the car had bottomed out, and the water source seemed to have been exploited wantonly. As soon as a trace of water seeped out, it was the miners couldn't wait to dig out the soil. PFF'd. Another stream of blood surged up. Is this just killing people until they are soft? Speaking of which, killing people is really tiring. Someone thought with some evil intentions in his heart, and subconsciously waved the knife-wielding right hand out again. When, however, this time the attack seemed to have made no achievements, and the sharp blade was firmly blocked. Then a very fast wind sounded, and someone wanted to activate Shunpo, but his nearly exhausted energy and tired body made him slow down. Boom! A feeling of impact from a blunt object came from behind, and someone stumbled on his feet, almost unsteady on his feet. The powerful pain at first gradually turned into a burning sensation, and finally became numb. But he could still imagine that his back was probably a bloody mess at this time. Ahem. His vision blurred for a while, and when someone lowered his head and coughed, it seemed that his fate was already determined. Surrounded by powerful enemies, there was no room for carelessness. A moment's negligence could determine a fatal outcome. Caught him. A pair of strong big hands hugged Kinosuke tightly before he could react. The powerful impact involuntarily stimulated someone to spit out a mouthful of blood again. In fact, it doesn't have to be like this at all. Someone is almost exhausted at this time, and any means of evasion will be useless. However, Cloud Shinobi's approach is the safest. Who knows if this boy who seems to come from the region will suddenly disappear again. After all, the strength he showed before is too powerful. Looking at the fallen corpses scattered around, who could have imagined that half of the entire ninja army composed of genin and chunin had been cut off by his ninja sword? This is really terrible. But everything must come to an end. Call out. The kunai shot from the air seemed to indicate the end of everything. Is it finally over? In fact, regarding death, when Kinosuke actually faced it, he found that he was much calmer than he thought. Life is such a precious thing, but compared to some more important things, it seems not worth mentioning. At this time, he did not feel a trace of fear in his heart due to the imminent death, but was instead thinking about other things. Logically speaking, if this was a time travel genre, I would be the perfect protagonist of a cool novel. Although I don't want to pretend to be a pig and eat a tiger, or have a harem of 3,000 beauties, but I have to give it to me no matter what. Get a set. It's time for a sudden breakthrough in a certain death situation, a plot twist, a big counterattack, etc. Looking at kunai who seemed to be slowing down, all kinds of messy thoughts in Kinosuke's mind passed by, but they could not hinder the pace of death in the slightest. Poof! There was a sound of a sharp object piercing the body, and blood flew out and sprayed Kinosuke's face. His eyes widened and he couldn't believe what he was seeing. No, his voice sounded full of fear and sadness, like a wounded and angry lone wolf. Kinosuke never thought that one day he would cry in sorrow. But when the blood splashed onto his face, when he saw the pale face and tried to squeeze out a comforting smile, Kinosuke's whole body collapsed. He just discovered that people can be so painful when they are sad, and can feel so desperate when the things they value most disappear. Kinosuke Zengjin felt that he would live his life very selfishly. In this world that he has no compatibility with, and even secretly rejects, as long as he can survive, he may be happy to live his life easily. But during their long time together, Minato and Kushina were the first to make him realize that he might be able to sacrifice something for others. And Shuiran, the girl who had just come into his heart with a hint of clumsiness, at this moment, made him understand for the first time what true heartache meant. Perhaps, from the very beginning when she was unwilling to evacuate with the wounded, Kinosuke should have noticed how such a persistent and stubborn girl could wait obediently. She was not just watching herself fight, but was watching carefully. She was waiting for the best opportunity. That chance to do something for the one she loves. Yes, she did it. The moment before the kunai was about to hit Kinosuke's chest, she used her body to receive the fatal blow. And her delicate hands even struck out at the last moment what might be the last palm of her life. The palm containing chakra accurately hit the Cloud Shinobi's arm, making him unable to use any strength anymore, and finally, he had to slowly let go of Kinosuke. A relieved smile appeared on her face, her lips opened and closed gently, her voice was very low, but Kinosuke heard it very clearly. Quote. Fool, no, do not want. I don't want you to die. It seemed like the boy's last willful words, but the girl might not have heard them. A pair of beautiful eyes closed gently. She was still worried about Kinosuke's safety in the end. I would like to be your umbrella. What if it's sunny? Kinosuke, you are so disappointing. Are you going to hit me again? What about Hyuga's branch house? As the previous scenes between the two of them were recalled in his mind like movie clips, Nosuke was going crazy. Wave after wave of powerful aura began to emerge around him. Only then did he finally understand that there was a price to pay for the memory killing. I don't want this kind of memory. Take it away quickly, I just want Schwerin to live. The young man kept shouting in his heart and cried hysterically. As if a sigh came, the powerful aura in front of the young man slowly dissipated, but bursts of illusions burst out from him inexplicably. As if in another space, his body seemed to be outlined with shadows. But it gradually turned solid, and then turned into a shadow again. Just like that, another kunai suddenly passed through, but it was like stabbing a phantom, straight through the young man's body. With a thud, it was inserted into the tree trunk behind him. The young man suddenly raised his head, and all the Cloud Shinobi were shocked to find that the young man's eyes began to slowly change. What kind of eyes were these? His vision began to clear, and Kinnisuke had never felt that he was actually observing the world in such a way, as if he were sitting in front of the computer and clicking the mouse to control the hero. His whole person seemed to have opened up a god's perspective. Thin lines weaved and twisted in the air, and various data appeared, connecting everyone and every item. As if subconsciously, he looked at Hyuga Schwerin, the girl who gave her life for her. A ribbon-like line in front of his body broke, and Kinnisuke felt an urgent call coming from his heart. Quick, patch it. He stretched out his hand and gently grabbed the thread of fate that represented Shui Ran. He didn't know how to do it, but he couldn't help but tie the thread firmly to his body. Then the screen shook, and the real world appeared again, as if everything before was just a dream. He was still surrounded by Cloud Shinobi, who was looking at him with eager eyes, and next to him was Hyuga, who was still lying on the ground with a lifeless breath, and he was still scarred. But Kinnisuke knew that it was not an illusion or a dream, but a feeling coming from the depths of his heart or soul. Fate cannot be changed, you will make up for it from other places in the future. A sigh sounded like an illusion again. That's for the future, isn't it? Although his body was covered with scars, there was a smile on his lips. Although he didn't know what was going on, he was certain that his and Shui Ran's fates were firmly tied together. As long as he was still alive, she would also will live with myself. So now, the only task is to survive the attack of these fools. The previous vision did not bring him any recovery. When Cloud Shinobi attacked, it once again brought him new scars. Now, this genius of Konoha has reached the end of his rope. Just a moment of mental relaxation, several scars appeared on his body again. The double suppression and pain on the mental and physical levels made it impossible for him to control his body to make any slightest reaction. Some were just waves of numbness and no feeling. Slashing with efficiency, he was like a bystander, a soul about to leave the body. Finally, has the limit been reached? In the end, it's still like this. I'm really not the protagonist of Shuangwen. He was thinking randomly again, and he who had already resigned himself to his fate suddenly felt a trace of unwillingness in his heart for no reason. He tried to open his eyes and didn't know what he was expecting. A golden ray of light appeared in front of his eyes like a dawn breaking through the darkness. The plot is indeed powerful. He said this again. There is no need to die, he chuckled, but it was so refreshing. Shui Ran would also be alive, he was convinced for no reason. God was taking care of him. When Cloud Shinobi's attack was about to hit him, a golden flash of light passed by at high speed. In the next second, he had been transferred to another place together with Yushang Shiranju. Then Kinnisuke heard only a mixture of noisy sounds. Then he was hurriedly carried and moved to another relatively peaceful place. Where are the medical ninjas? These two need first aid. Others step forward to hold back. Don't let Cloud Shinobi's fool get closer to here. Fourth generation is finally here. Sorry, I'm late. Looking at his friend's almost intact body, Minato's whole arm was shaking. What kind of battle is he fighting? Cloud Shinobi's corpses were scattered all over the ground. So shocking. Without any reinforcements, he faced Cloud Shinobi's troops alone. But he still didn't flinch and chose the option that was most cruel to him. Save Shui Ran quickly. Don't worry, Minato comforted, she's not heavy. It was hard to imagine that Minato turned his head and looked at the girl whose chest was almost penetrated. She is still alive. Even Minato was extremely surprised. He had seen Hyuga Schwerin's injuries, those fatal wounds. Even Jonin, who had extremely strong vitality, might not be able to survive such an almost fatal injury. They rescued him. But she vaguely seemed to be protected by a huge rule, and her life was not in any danger for the time being. Oh, that's good. Kinnisuke finally breathed a sigh of relief. Unable to bear the fatigue of his body any longer, he fainted. The day after Kinnisuke fell into coma. Although the war is still ongoing, Konoha's top brass were gathered together in a very short time. Among them, senior wood industry executives including 3rd Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen, and even Jiraiya on the front line were temporarily transferred back to sit in the meeting, at the table. The cause of all this is just an ordinary 5-person team that performs cleaning and detection work in the rear of Konoha, or to be more precise, it is because of 2 teenagers who shined in it and started to make a name for themselves. I am afraid that before knowing the specific situation, no one would have expected that they would organize such a seemingly absurd meeting for 2 Genin City residents. Sarutobi sat at the end of the long table and spoke to the white-haired man standing at the door of the conference room. Then, you can start this report, Jiraiya. Yes. We originally planned to set up a false rear camp to lure Cloud Shinobi to carry out a hardcore attack. I can't go into the details of the specific plan. The main report is about some special circumstances during the execution of the plan. It was an unusual, serious and unemotional statement. Although the owner of this voice was the now famous Sanin, a disciple of the 3rd generation, it was able to make the entire Konoha hierarchy listen to him quietly. To state the facts, this was almost impossible to do in the past. But this time, it is an exception. Not only because he was the commander of this war, but more importantly because he and 2 of Orochimaru's disciples were involved in this incident, and they can be considered closely related. Namikaze Minato. Born in an ordinary family, he has already shown talents beyond ordinary people even before he graduated from the ninja school. But here I have to talk about Konoha's civilian ninjas and ninja families. Compared with those Konoha clans who have a deep foundation and have more resources and secret techniques left by their ancestors, civilian ninjas want to reach the top, but they have to fight entirely on their own. Go explore. Under normal circumstances, if civilian ninjas want to surpass those children from wealthy families, they often need to work several times or even more than they do. And sometimes even no matter how hard you put in, you can't compare to the good genes of others and the hard work from a big family. However, this does not mean that civilian ninjas are necessarily inferior to family ninjas. Sometimes talent is also very important. If you have extraordinary talent, you can easily crush others. Minato is one of them. In the beginning, when the world of ninja was born, the ninjutsu created by Sage of 6 Paths could be roughly divided into 7 basic attributes: wood, water, fire, earth, wind, yin, and yang, and these basic attributes where they can be merged and derived from each other. Some strong ninjas can even cultivate 1 or 2 of the attributes to the ultimate, thereby creating their own unique secret technique. This is generally called the blood succession limit, and some can even refine it at the same time. 3 of these different attributes create the heaven-defying existence of bloodline. But in addition to these ninjutsu, there is also another system of ninjutsu legends circulating in the ninja world. That is the time and space ninjutsu. Many years ago, Konoha's second Hokage Senju Faima had great attainments in this area. It is said that this guy is simply a genius. Because in addition to developing the Flying Thunder God technique, he also developed a series of forbidden techniques such as the Impure World Reincarnation. Although these forbidden techniques were all packaged as forbidden techniques and sealed in later generations, they could not to mention, if there wasn't an even more pervert Senju Hashirama suppressing it, this guy would have gone to heaven long ago. However, it is precisely because of the existence of Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara that the real geniuses hide in their shadows. Without further ado, let's return to the previous topic. It is precisely because the Flying Thunder God technique left over from the 2nd generation project that involves space is so awesome that as long as you enter the battlefield, small-scale battles are not too simple. Therefore, at the beginning, countless people in Konoha tried to learn and imitate this technique, but I don't know that it was because it was too advanced, and they all ended in failure. After all, the more powerful and magical the ninjutsu is, the higher the threshold for entry is. Too harsh learning requirements make most people just get stuck in getting started and not make any progress. However, now this heaven-defying technique is actually mastered by a young man, and he uses it very skillfully. How could this not make Konoha's top management pay absolute attention to it? At that time, I just asked Minato to practice with the mentality of giving it a try, but unexpectedly, he succeeded. Jiraiya's tone was calm, but the audience here gasped. Everyone understands that in martial arts, only speed is the key to unbreakable speed, but as a ninja, who doesn't know how to use the body flicker technique? However, the extremely demanding learning requirements and various drawbacks make the body flicker technique unable to compete with Flying Thunder. God's random flashing can also be used as a return to the city. There is no path, regardless of all obstacles. As long as you draw the spell in advance, you can reach any place you want to reach in an instant. Ninjas are a profession that is good at assassination, and for ninjas, such ninjutsu is really not too powerful. This kind of high mobility coupled with the powerful killer ninjutsu is simply a way for gods to block gods and Buddhas to block Buddhas. It is almost conceivable that as long as you master this ninjutsu, Konoha will definitely have a feared cage-level strongman in many places in the future. However, that's not all. The surprising and gratifying news is not over yet. In addition to Minato, there is another more expected and terrifying genius in the temporary team. Compared to the former, his performance in the ninja school was mediocre, and he even had a record of failing theory classes. But this boy, a boy who no one expected, would be as if he had eaten Schwanmai after graduation. It's different. Hainosuke. This boy seems to have also mastered the same space ninjutsu as Minato. If it is also the Flying Thunder God technique of the second generation, everyone will probably cheer that the twin sons of the Sun and the Lightning are born in Konoha. However, the space-time ninjutsu mastered by this young man seems to be weaker than the Flying Thunder God technique on the surface, but in the eyes of senior officials, this young man is actually a more genius than Minato. The reason is that there is no information on this kind of ninjutsu in Konoha, so the only possibility is that this boy developed it himself. And this guy just used this secret technique to kill Cloud Shinobi number 1 or 200 ninjas just a few days ago. This is a bit scary. A lot of high-level officials felt that their age was like a dog, and they felt that this young man was simply a genius and unreasonable. But if that's the case, forget it. The key is that this young man actually still has some kind of powerful blood inheritance limit. This is simply terrifying. If it hadn't been confirmed repeatedly that this child was just picked up by Orochimaru during a mission, everyone here would really think that this kid is the reincarnation of Six Paths. Yes, although he, CCFJ, is far from the terrifying strength of first generation at that time, Konosuke is still young now. Who knows if he will grow up to be a presence alongside first generation in the future. After losing the absolutely powerful blessing of the first generation, whether it was Sarutobi, who was the shadow of a village, or Danzo, who was buried deep in the darkness, they all tried to get back the absolute power that could restore Konoha to its former glory. Obviously, so far, they are still facing endless failures. However, at this moment, the sudden rise of two teenagers who were comparable to the first generation and the second generation gave Konoha's top brass a glimmer of hope. I propose that Namikaze Minato and Konosuke be moved away from the front lines immediately. Seconded. Throwing geniuses into the furnace of war and tempering them is an iron rule that almost all ninjas will default to. After all, geniuses can be divided into ordinary and extraordinary. Konoha really couldn't bear the risk of sending them to the battlefield. When other major powers learned this information, in order to prevent the recurrence of existences like Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara in Konoha in the future, these two children would he will become an assassination target in other ninja villages, Konoha village, before Hokage himself. Therefore, it is absolutely a fool's errand to send a seedling that will definitely become a strong man in the ninja world to the battlefield before it develops, expose it to the enemy's eyes, and be directly targeted and killed. Therefore, before they truly grow up, Konoha village will never expose them to the enemy's sight easily. In view of Konosuke's various performances, I have some things that I want to discuss with this genius of day. Just when everyone's blood was boiling, a low and terrifying voice sounded. As soon as the voice spoke, the whole scene immediately became deserted. Except for the Uchiha and Hyuga super clans, the elders of each clan began to meditate by observing the nose and the nose. There is no doubt that the person who spoke is Shimura Danzo, who is sitting to the left of Sarutobi. For ordinary village names, this name may be a bit unfamiliar, and I have never even heard of it. Even if he has heard of it, it is probably because he carries the identity of a Hokage consultant. However, for this group of people at the peak of Konoha's power, the name Danzo can be said to be a real ban. Even if the Uchiha clan is exterminated in the future, this guy will play an indispensable role in it. After all, he can stand on a par with third generation. The scene fell silent for a while. In Konoha's temporary camp. When Konosuke woke up again, he found himself lying on a white hospital bed. The powerful mental power brought by the successful fusion of the two destiny stars allowed Konosuke to calibrate his consciousness in the shortest possible time. And judging from the time, he might have been in a coma for at least 3 to 5 days. Well, the fluctuations coming from the soul indicate that Shui Ranru is still alive. That's really great. As for your own injuries, he doesn't care about this. The fact that he can still open his eyes means that he is not dead yet. With the powerful attribute of the tenacity skill, as long as he is out of the battle and there is still a trace of blood and skin, he can slowly make up for the lost life through food. Wow, Konosuke sat up with some difficulty. Excessive consumption on the battlefield, coupled with the long period of inactivity while unconscious, the hands and feet began to become sore and stiff and became inoperable. If they just moved arbitrarily according to their own likes and dislikes, it would also cause some considerable pain. But it doesn't matter anymore. Looking at himself wrapped like a mummy, Konosuke curled his lips helplessly and lay down again. "Hey, boy, are you awake?" An exclamation came from the side. Even while lying down, Konosuke could guess that the voice came from an old man with a pineapple head sitting on the bed next to him. He had not yet adapted from the battlefield and had already observed all the situations in the ward when he sat up. This annoying occupational disease. Someone responded listlessly. He always retained a certain degree of vigilance towards strangers. It's really unpleasant. The uncle opposite was very dissatisfied with this. "I want you to take care of it, bite too. By the way, uncle, who are you?" Someone rolled his eyes. Now that he has cultivated after the war, his tense nerves have begun to relax. His whole person seems to be lazy and he doesn't want to move his mouth. Now, I'm afraid it has spread all over Konoha. Konoha's Shira, Crimson Flash. The uncle obviously did not keep silent because of someone's bad attitude, but talked to himself. But these words also attracted someone's great attention. "The Scarlet Flash of Konoha. Are you talking about me?" Konosuke was alerted instantly, but in his heart he couldn't wait to hear how others evaluated him. Nowadays, good news from the front line is spreading frequently. Your glorious deeds have been known to everyone, and you are regarded as a heroic existence by everyone. "Oh yeah, I deserve this," someone thought shamelessly in his heart, thinking that all this was reasonable and expected. In order to cover the evacuation of the wounded, he single-handedly held back the entire Cloud Shinobi army of hundreds of people for 2 hours, and annihilated hundreds of Cloud Shinobi genin and dozens of chunin. Even Jonin had such a terrifying record. Give it up. There are even vague rumors in the village that you are the next White Fang of Konoha. Oh haha, it's a bit exaggerated. Ah ha ha ha, uncle, you are really good at complimenting people. Don't you dare take it seriously. Someone was praised so much that his mouth reached the back of his ears. At the same time, his previous indifferent attitude suddenly changed, and his whole person became a lot more enthusiastic. Some people say that you are the next Hokage's successor. How about the 4th generation? Nara Shikazumi raised his eyebrows. Ahahaha, uncle, you are so polite. Ha ha ha. Being praised so fiercely by Nara Shikamaru, someone was so bloated that he began to lose his bearings. Nara Luchan seemed to have figured out this guy's tricks, and secretly cursed in his heart, this young boy is really too immodest. How can you say this is polite? Everything is well deserved. Ouch, ha 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 ha, I don't dare take it. I really deserve this title. You are a great hero. Oops, ah ha ha ha, opening square bracket. Crack, while Konosuke and Nara Shikazumi were chatting, suddenly the door of the ward was opened and a ninja walked in. He was dressed like an Anbu, wearing a mask, and his voice was indifferent but conveyed a meaning that could not be rejected. Please come with me. The room fell into silence for a moment. Let's go. How? Someone looked down at the bandaged body and rolled his eyes at the ninja. Are you kidding me? I'm so seriously injured, do you want me to go away? The ninja didn't care about Konosuke's attitude, and then a stretcher was carried in by 2 medical ninjas. Kid, don't worry, I should be asking about some information on the battlefield. Nara Shikaku comforted with a smile. Oh, really? Someone raised an eyebrow and was carried on a stretcher, looking at Nara with a deep look on Shikaku's face. Well, uncle, see you soon. Konosuke lay helplessly on the stretcher and turned around to wave to Nara Shikazumi. By the way, it felt so good to be praised just now. Where is the route? It wasn't until Kinosuke was carried out of the ward that Nara Shikaku's expression gradually darkened, but he knew in his heart where the young man would be carried. There is the gathering of all the dark sides of Konoha. Are you going to do anything? Unlike the way he comforted the boy before, Nara Shikazumi thought of something more. I'm afraid it's not just a simple question, right? A figure with golden hair flashed in his mind, and for a moment he seemed to have grasped something. These two boys are really similar, he sighed, but added in his heart, just like third generation me and Danzo. Kinosuke was carried forward, walked out of the temporary tent in Konoha's injured area, and walked towards the woods outside. The light is getting darker and darker, as if reflecting that sentence, the root of all evil often exists in the dark place. Finally, after walking for an unknown amount of time, Anbu, who was leading the way, suddenly stopped and directed the two medical ninjas to put the stretcher in place, and then the three of them slowly retreated. You came. A deep sound came from the shadows ahead, but it was impossible to identify where it came from. It was a very heavy sound with very little emotion. Hearing this voice, Shizasuke's heart trembled inexplicably, and he couldn't help but squint his eyes and look forward. All around were cold, damp shrubs. It was dim but had a faint mist color, as if no sunlight could penetrate. I believe you must be very confused now. His voice sounded again, low and slow, as if he was trying to figure out his tone at any time, and he would use a high profile to form the strongest pressure on the other party at any time. He seemed born to be the most outstanding conspirator. Hatano Kinosuke, Konoha Genin, was the adopted son who was secretly brought back to the village by Orochimaru 6 years ago. He lives in Orochimaru's mansion, and although he rarely appears, he has been secretly carrying out Konoha Anbu's assassination operations against various genin. I entered the ninja school a year ago, and my theoretical scores have always been at the middle and lower levels, and I was once at risk of not graduating. I was taken out of the ninja school by Orochimaru a year ago, and entered Anbu to become a member of the nominal Anbu team. Since Zaren Jonin's dereliction of duty incident, he has been revealed Shang formed a temporary team with Genin Hyuga Yukirin and Gang Motosho, nominally under the jurisdiction of Orochimaru. Entered the battlefield 3 months ago, and captured 1 Cloud Shinobi Jonin 6 days ago. Killed 128 Cloud Shinobi Genin 5 days ago. Killed 69 Cloud Shinobi Chunin. He spoke fluently in a low tone, as if he had experienced everything personally. Then, as if he remembered something, he added again, by the way, he seems to have an extremely angry pursuit of food. He was once dubbed the god of cookery by an entire street in Konoha. What does it mean to have an extremely angry pursuit of food? What if I eat more when I'm growing? Also, what the hell is Hato? My only name is Kinosuke. Don't add prefixes to my name randomly. I'll beat you up if you think of it again. Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. He turned a deaf ear to Kinosuke's expression as if he had eaten shit, and slowly left the shadows, appearing in front of Kinosuke. My name is Shimura Danzo. It was obvious that this ordinary-looking middle-aged man was Danzo. He was still wily and scheming in his old age. His eyes were sharper now, as if he wanted to smash everything that was blocking him in front of him. Why is this an old thing? Kinosuke's eyes suddenly shrank. Something bad is going on. Why did Danzo come to see me? Could it be that this old guy thinks that my aptitude is so extraordinary that I am like a clear spring in Konoha, so he can't tolerate what I want? Turning around and looking at the inaccessible landscape around him, someone's heart sank. It was indeed a perfect place for killing people and looting. In fact, it's up to Kinosuke to think about this. Compared to Shinobi Sarutobi, this guy's methods are darker and more shady, but it has to be said that they are also more effective. Anyway, it's definitely not good for this grandson to come to him. Kinosuke added this sentence silently in his heart. Danzo just silently watched the boy's heart-shaking changes and slander against him. Danzo was not surprised by Kinosuke's reaction. As Orochimaru's adopted son, it was not impossible that he must have known something about himself. And judging from the expression on the kid's face, Orochimaru should have been in front of him. Mentioned myself. But no problem. A smile appeared on Danzo's lips, but that faint smile, as if he was sure of winning, had a condescending attitude with an extremely annoying feeling. In recent times, a young genius has emerged in Konoha. He has learned the second-generation Flying Thunder God technique. He is extremely talented and has infectious and leadership skills. He has become the leader of many new forces. 2 days ago, Sarutobi had secretly decided to start training him as a future 4th generation project. In this regard, Danzo felt a little pressure in his heart. Sarutobi's power will surely become stronger and stronger. Even so, Danzo had no idea of competing with Sarutobi. On the one hand, it was because the young man's temperament was not suitable for entering his influence. On the other hand, and the most important reason, he found a man who was no less powerful than that boy. Children should even be stronger and more suitable for their own teenagers. Regardless of his means, character or strength, Danzo is very satisfied with this kid. In fact, if this kid hadn't appeared, Sarutobi's increasingly powerful Hokage forces would have been reduced and suppressed through follow-up measures. After all, their growing strength was a stumbling block that prevented them from ascending to the position of Hokage. But ever since he got the news about this kid, Danzo had a vague idea in his mind. A gloomy smile appeared on his face. The first step in the plan is, of course, to close the distance between yourself and the other person. You have been in a coma for nearly a month. So, first of all, I need to tell you some information. His smile that he thought was contagious couldn't help but make Konosuke even more wary. Cloud Shinobi has lost most of its combat power after this battle. It has been completely defeated. The war is about to end. Why don't you give me such breaking news from the beginning? Someone was stunned for a while, but then he thought about it, but this was expected. Although he didn't quite understand what the high-level officials in Konoha planned, he didn't believe that the high-level officials in Konoha would not plan such a large-scale ninja transfer. What kind of trap was laid? I remember that Jiraiya personally led the team. If that's the case, I'm afraid Cloud Shinobi will suffer heavy losses. Without the intermediate combat power, Cloud Shinobi may have lost the basis for its stalemate with Konoha. At this time, Konoha has a lot of high-end combat power. Because, in addition to Sannin, who is already famous in the ninja world, there are also masters in Konoha. That's right, just like the first-generation Senju Hashirama during World War I, the third-generation Sarutobi Hiruzen, although not as overwhelming as Wood style, is known as a Dr. Ninja existence. In this way, most of the intermediate combat power is lost, and the high-level combat power cannot be competed. Cloud Shinobi's failure was predictable, and Danzo has no intention of stopping. The information he wants to tell is more than that. At the end of your decisive battle with Cloud Shinobi, Namikaze Minato arrived with Konoha's wounded, but managed to delay the arrival of Orochimaru, who came to rescue. A smile appeared on Danzo's face. It was really timely. The girl from Hyuga Branch House just saved her life. Compared to his calmness, Konosuke's body suddenly shook. Are you really alive? This is simply great. Although Konosuke could feel the looming involvement deep in his soul, now that he heard Danzo tell it personally, Konosuke finally felt relieved. This is really a miracle. For ordinary people, the chance of surviving is less than 10%, or even smaller. Danzo shook his head with a sigh. It must be said that his grasp of people's hearts is simply wonderful. At this time, he knows what Konosuke wants to know, and he also understands the weakness in his heart. Or maybe this sentence is more like a test to test this girl's status in Konosuke's heart. Seeing Konosuke's expression at this time, he couldn't help but confirm his thoughts even more, secretly thinking about the next step, and becoming more confident about conquering Konosuke. Chapter 51. After a short silence, Konosuke slowly breathed a sigh of relief. After the big stone in his heart fell, he became even more relaxed. Then he looked at Danzo and began to figure out what the old guy was planning. His previously tense spirit due to the war suddenly relaxed, but now he did not dare to relax at all, because he knew that there was a guy in front of him that was even more difficult to deal with than Cloud Shinobi. Facing the biggest conspirator who almost ran through the upper and middle parts of the Hokage plot, he did not dare to have any contempt. After all, there were so many conspiracies in the Hokage plot that this man was behind the scenes. There is a saying on the forum that this guy actually started World War II. Danzo, who was observing everything silently, frowned slightly. He could see that not only did this kid not relax at all, but he was even more wary of himself. This can't be done. This kid made him a little confused, but it was okay, it only proved his value. Is that all you have? His eyes narrowed slightly, and his voice was slightly chilly. I just want to go back to bed now. Someone complained in his heart, but he didn't dare to do it. Who knows whether the old guy will turn against him in the next moment. So he just sat on the stretcher numbly, pretending to be listening attentively, but it was hard to say whether he was actually listening or not. After all, Danzo's words were like a pyramid scheme, and he would be poisoned if he listened too much. I have another piece of information here, but I wonder if you are interested. Danzo had a panoramic view of all Kinosuke's expressions. He did not eagerly want to change anything, but took it step by step. Patient predators would always catch it, of prey. Tell me about it. This couldn't help but arouse someone's curiosity. After all, what this old guy Danzo just said was full of useful information from beginning to end. About the limits of your blood inheritance. In fact, Kinosuke almost never deliberately concealed the ability of his life star, because please do not underestimate the intelligence capabilities of the major ninja villages. In addition, after his reputation first emerged, I am afraid that detailed information about his battle situation has already been placed on the desktops of Konoha's top brass. I should be a celebrity now. Someone thought happily, not having the slightest idea whether he would be caught and dissected if he was too dazzling. After all, if it is exposed too much, it will be very eye-catching. As the saying goes, if a tree is beautiful in the forest, it will be destroyed by the wind, and so on. It's really a powerful blood inheritance limit, weird attack method, continuous teleportation technique like Flying Thunder God, weird space ability. It is said that you also have a sword technique that shoots from the sky. Danzo slowly recounted that he had actually paid attention to this boy a long time ago, and it was precisely because of this that he was even more shocked. These two people are so similar, with the same talent, the same wisdom, and the same inheritance of the Flying Thunder God technique of second generation. If they are really different, it is just a difference in personality. Sarutobi, are you really my lifelong rival? God gave you a child named Minato, but at the same time, I discovered a boy named Kinosuke. Maybe this is fate. Danzo, who has always been full of energy, couldn't help but lament the uncertainty of fate. At this time, a thought suddenly came to his mind, is the future really the world of young people? But it's not surprising that he had this idea. It was because Minato and Kinosuke were too dazzling. We have made a preliminary evaluation of your potential. We believe that your future achievements will be no less than those of first generation. Frank words came out of Danzo's mouth, and he looked at Kinosuke as if he had discovered a piece of natural jade. Kinosuke was a little confused by Danzo's generous praise. Do you think so highly of me? In the entire ninja world, if the Sage of Six Paths belongs to a god who is worshipped from above, then the title of the strongest ninja belongs to another man. He is the one, Senju Hashirama. This man who carries a series of titles such as the Hokage First Generation, the founder of Konoha, and the strongest wood style is called the strongest in the genin world of Six Paths. None of them, at least in the eyes of most people, even the owner of Uchiha Madara, who has terrible eyes and a legendary life, is better than him. Not only because Senju Hashirama has certain qualities that Uchiha Madara does not have, but also because Master Madara has been beaten by him. I was beaten hard every time. At least some of his abilities even completely overcome a certain pair of eyes left over from the Sage of Six Paths. As for this, we can completely understand why so many people try to get the power he once had after the death of the first generation. Instantaneous limb regeneration, the manipulation of huge shrubs that can be called forests, and the ability to be instilled in him. Terrible power in every corner of the body. Yes, that's the power of wood style. So with this series of data for reference, Kinosuke felt the arrogance and ridiculousness of Danzo's words. Your future achievements will be no less than first generation. Ha ha ha, do you think I'm exaggerating? Regarding Kinosuke's disapproving look, Danzo did not immediately get angry and argue with him, but spoke calmly, as if to explain something. Fact, we have conducted a special investigation and evaluation regarding your blood inheritance limit. Evaluate, investigation, okay, are you really going to use me for experiments? Someone secretly felt the energy in the body and the recovery of the body, and silently considered the probability of safely escaping from Danzo's hands at this time. The recovery from paralysis. the muscle atrophy that should occur after a long period of inactivity, and other negative states are now minimal. Even if he has just recovered, even if he is still exhausted mentally, this does not prevent him from using his power again. At the very least, escape should be possible. Although Danzo, as a ninja who was the same generation as the third generation, has unfathomable strength, he has not transplanted a large number of blood eyes after all, right? Even if you die, you will never get my body. It's obvious that someone is thinking wrongly. Of course, the immature boy was just thinking about himself and was sweating, and didn't even care about Danzo, who was watching everything carefully. Danzo did not get angry as the young man thought, and just stared at him quietly. Although he still could not guess what the young man was thinking at this time, it did not prevent him from sighing in his heart. Good concentration. Neither arrogant nor impetuous. If an ordinary ninja hears that he can compete with the first generation, I am afraid that even if he is not so excited that he cannot control himself, he will be happy. But this boy is different. He only saw silence and even a trace of alertness on his face. He knew very well, better than anyone else, that it was the certain decision of the boy in front of him that made Konoha's plan to encircle and annihilate Cloud Shinobi be carried out perfectly. He once understood some situations. Kinosuke's 5-man team was not like Genin's rookies who accidentally entered the war zone because of their arrogance. On the contrary, all their travel routes, and subsequent escape routes, were all centered around the military map of Konoha's plan. Their marching route was extremely purposeful and tactical, as if the military command headquarters that had always made plans was controlling everything remotely, almost exactly. However, Danzo, who knew everything, knew that they had never made any contact with the headquarters. The truth is that there are people among them who are conducting writing and planning with almost the same command. There are almost no coincidences in this situation. Therefore, it is precisely because of this that after showing weakness to the enemy, but concealing the true strategic intentions of the companions, the information provided to Cloud Shinobi after the companions fell into the hands of Cloud Shinobi. With its considerable authenticity, it becomes the finishing touch. If this proves his keen observation of the battlefield and his ability to control the situation, then the subsequent one-man fight against hundreds of Cloud Shinobi proves his strong strength. Danzo's eyes couldn't help but stare at the boy in front of him who still looked young. Not to mention his strength, there were no people with his kind-heartedness and decisive ability in Konoha except for the kid named Minato who could barely compare. I'm afraid there will be no second person. And from the above speculation, it can be seen that this child has the ruthlessness and decisiveness that a superior person should have, but this kind of character is extremely difficult to cultivate. In the world of ninjas, although strength means everything, on top of that, if you have the corresponding wisdom and character, the world will crawl at your feet. Yes, Danzo even had the illusion that this young, immature and somewhat impetuous boy would one day hold the scepter of glory and stand at the pinnacle of Konoha, no, the entire ninja world. So, what identity will he use to reach the pinnacle of the Jonin world in the future? The identity of Orochimaru's adopted son. The hero of Konoha. No, this is not enough. Until now, Danzo, who thought he was ambitious, was still planning for his future path to become a Hokage, but now he feels that he may have changed his mind. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, a smile that was undoubtedly about to plot some conspiracy. The limit of your blood inheritance is very special, so special that we can't give it a complete definition. He paused slightly, and then he dropped a bombshell. It's different from Uchiha and Hyuga's Sharingan Byakugan, and it's also different from the various escape techniques transformed by special chakra. But it belongs to another category. This kind of thing seems to touch the rules and can hardly be used with common sense. The explanation is even reflected in you in more than one form. Kinosuke was shocked for no reason. It was Danzo. Although he didn't like him very much, he had to say that his meticulous research and precise judgment on certain things were really admirable. However, Kinosuke, who was still in shock, had already thrown a huge seal scroll to Kinosuke without any explanation before he could recover. Looking at the thick scroll, Kinosuke was sure that there must be something extremely precious hidden in it. It looks like a scroll. Why is this happening? This old boy Danzo actually gives me books. A feeling like a weasel paying New Year greetings to a chicken arose in Kinosuke's heart. Is this, for me? Someone asked stupidly. This is my meeting gift to you. Danzo waved his hand, and the Anbu appeared again, then called 2 medical ninjas to lift Konosuke up again and return to where he was. Someone had a confused look on his face. He was really confused about Danzo's anticlimactic summons. He talked nonsense like this, and then gave him a book and let himself go. What the hell is going on? Someone who really couldn't understand couldn't help but open the scroll in his hand. The sealed book. The stretcher moved further and further away, gradually disappearing into the dusk. Danzo raised his head, as if whispering to the wind in the air. How do you feel? How? A hoarse laugh came from the side. Orochimaru's unique face slowly appeared from the darkness. Are you trying to recruit that kid? There was an uncertain light in Danzo's eyes, but he murmured in a rare low voice, maybe the future will really be the world of young people. Haha, then you can just say it directly. Why waste so much words? After all, that kid is very slow. Orochimaru chuckled. After all, he has been with Konosuke for many years and has a certain understanding of him. Learn. No, he will understand. Danzo retorted directly, his words still elusive. You don't know him. In fact, this is not a question of who doesn't understand whom. Konosuke's first reaction after seeing sealing techniques was, Danzo, this old boy is trying to frame me. The sealed book was packaged and sent to me directly, and it was hard not to suspect that there was something fishy about it. Not to mention that this guy is full of bad intentions, and he has no character at all. He definitely wants to use the sealed book as money to blackmail me into doing things for him. Otherwise, why would he give such a big gift? Could it be that he really saw me as a rare martial arts prodigy because of my extraordinary bones, so he gave me a book of peerless magical skills to practice and provide a ray of warmth for the peace of the ninja world in the future? I'm afraid even ghosts wouldn't believe this kind of plot. Konosuke helped Doran himself, but the truth he guessed was not far from the truth. The only difference is that this time Danzo was really kind in sending the book, and there were not as many twists and turns as he thought. So, Konosuke was in a daze for a moment while holding the scroll. To practice or not to practice? I succumb to the power of others and let others control me. Am I, Konosuke, that kind of person? Looking at the sealed book in his hand, someone made a decision in an instant. In other words, this is completely different knowledge from all the escape techniques I have come across before. Multiple shadow clone technique, flying thunder god technique, wood style, water style and various powerful atypical ninjutsu are all recorded above. This is simply a collection of forbidden technique. Someone was sitting cross-legged on the bed, happily flipping through the contents of the scroll. For a moment, he felt that what he had learned before was all rubbish. Although it does not have the water attribute chakra and the unique physique of the Senju tribe, and cannot learn the powerful water style of wood style and second generation, it still contains some ninjutsu of other natures. What the ninja school and Orochimaru taught him before were nothing more than some conceptual descriptions of basic ninjutsu. For Konosuke, who didn't understand anything at the beginning, that might have laid a solid foundation for him, but this time, Danzo handed over the scroll given to Konosuke as actually released. This is something you can achieve every day after practicing it. Hey, what is this? Uncle Nara, who was sitting on the bed next to him, leaned over. Ever since the young man was carried back, he has been holding the scroll in silence, with the expression on his face sometimes smiling, sometimes angry, sometimes calm, sometimes wretched. This seems to describe all the emotions in the world. It is difficult for Naralu-chan to imagine how any different or mutually opposite expressions can be displayed on the same face. But it is obvious, this magical young man did it in years. Konosuke tilted his head with a grimace. Ah, can't you see it? Looking at someone's expression, Nara felt a chill behind him. No, it's okay, the boy said, turning the scroll over and looking at Nara Shikazumi. Uncle, how do you break this? Ah, Naralu-chan was stunned for a moment, then his eyes glanced at the scroll. PFF'd. The sealed book. Naralu-chan was a little dumbfounded. He looked at the young man with a miserable look on his face and suddenly became confused about the situation. Wasn't this kid taken away for questioning by Danzo? Why did he come back with this thing in his arms? Etc. Could it be? Nara Shikazumi seemed to have vaguely caught something for a moment. Hey, uncle. The boy's shout once again pulled Nara Shikaku out of his thoughts. Ah, How do you do this? It was like a man holding a lot of gold bricks on the street asking people how to spend it. For a moment, Nara's expression made Nara want to beat him up. You ask me. CCFH, yes. Someone said with a pure expression, because uncle, you seem to have a very high IQ. Oh, that's it. Nara frowned and thought, although the boy was right, but, tisk tisk, it's really troublesome. How about you practice? Although he is a member of Konoha's senior management, even though a young man is holding a sealed book in front of him and watching. Does it really matter if you don't stop it? But he seemed to have really asked for his opinion just now. As a hero of this war, it shouldn't be a problem to take a look at the sealed book. The key is, this should be given to him by that person. After listening to Nara Lu Chun's relatively pertinent answer, the last trace of hesitation in someone's heart finally disappeared, and he picked up the sealing techniques and turned the page with joy. Brush. An Anbu suddenly appeared in the ward. He looked expressionlessly at a certain boy who was holding sealing techniques and looked confused due to his arrival. Come with me. This is indeed a trap. Someone was struggling hard, but the Anbu couldn't hold him down for a while. Then another Anbu jumped out and subdued the person by pulling him. I was wrong. Someone shouted while holding the sealed book vigorously, and was then dragged out of the door by two Anbu. Nara Luchun looked at the scene in front of him with a blank expression, feeling that his brain was a little exhausted. This is really troublesome. True will cannot be defeated. My blade never trembles. Perhaps hearing someone's roar, the girl in another ward slowly woke up from the bed. Her black hair spread slowly as she sat up. The breeze blew the curtains, causing the hyacinths in front of the window to sway slightly. The warm sun-like incense slightly diluted the smell of disinfectant in the ward. She looked at everything in front of her slightly blankly, suffering from a long period of confusion. There was a hint of loneliness in her amber pupils. Are you still alive, Kinnisuke? She murmured in a low voice, and she couldn't help but think of the figure who stood in front of her and fought bloody battles for her that day. I'm still holding you back after all. Her slender white hands grasped the bedsheets hard. She has never hated herself for being weak. Even when she was born in a branch house, she never complained because she did not have enough strength. However, on that day, an unprecedented strong desire for power emerged in her heart. If I had strong power, maybe Sanosuke would be much more relaxed. She murmured, and then looked at her hands. In her sleep, she vaguely felt that her soul and destiny seemed to be tightly tied to Kinnisuke. Although it was incredible, it was a real feeling. She could clearly feel Kinnisuke's feeling, as if blood was merging, and both were prosperous and devastated. Can you really gain power? Even if you pay any price? A certain voice in my heart became stronger and stronger. True will cannot be defeated. My blade never trembles. She whispered the words that had been lingering in her heart. Buzz. A soft chirping sound came from the sword, as if coming from the depths of her soul for a long time, and the girl actually felt familiar for a while. Then a weapon divided into 4 blades floated in front of her out of thin air. Pick it up. There seemed to be a voice urging in my heart, pick it up and you will gain the power you have longed for. Really? The girl looked at the blade in front of her calmly, then slowly but firmly stretched out her hand. Boom. Huge but seemingly invisible energy, like stars in the universe, exploded in the girl's body. She slowly raised her head, but her eyes became deep and cold. I heard your call. My name is Aurelia. From now on we are one. Kinnisuke, please take good care of me in the future. The sun shone through the curtains, projecting a warm smile on the corner of her mouth. But I'm afraid Kinnisuke won't be able to give her much advice. After being forcibly taken away by 2 Anbu, someone was directly locked in a dark underground prison. Someone looked at the scroll in his hand boredly, while recalling another exchange with Danzo in his mind. I changed my mind. Sealed book, you can study hard here and no one will disturb you. How could you do this? I am a hero of Konoha, and I am seriously injured. You can't treat me like this. No, on the contrary, it is absolutely quiet here and no one will disturb you. You can rest here to recuperate and learn ninjutsu. Then what do you want? Me, you should be able to guess my purpose. Bah, you really don't have good intentions. Even if I die, I won't be your lackey. As expected, you still understand. I just want to cooperate with you. Just stay here until you finish learning the ninjutsu. Lousy would rather die than surrender. I remember Hyuga Schwerin is from Hyuga Branch House. The caged bird seal of Hyuga Branch House is. Ouch. What do you mean? Don't leave. Come back here. They come, the security. So this was a harmonious and polite conversation between Konosuke and Danzo, but no matter how you looked at it, this gloomy guy didn't seem to have any intention of letting him go. Konosuke can even predict his miserable life in the future. If his prediction is correct, he will probably become a glorious member of the Konoha roots. No, what a joke. I remember that the tongue at the base needs to be painted with something magical and weird, right? I don't want to face those lifeless people who have no interest in life all day long. Besides, if there is something on the tongue, will it affect Shuiran when doing shameful things? Ahem, of course, I don't care too much about this anymore, I mean with Minato. Bah, that's not what I meant, it's bad, my spirit has been tarnished. Someone gradually began to fall into a burst of random thoughts. Konoha Root belongs to a series of Konoha Anbu and belongs to an organization deployed for special operations like Anbu. Of course, from an outsider's point of view, the ninjas wearing various weird masks must be Konoha's assassination tactics special forces, so the Roots are no different from Anbu. But in fact, this idea is completely wrong. Konoha's Anbu is also divided into many different units based on strength and different forces. Among them, there are both the Shadow Guards who belong directly to the Hokage, and a very small number of them are protective forces belonging to major families. There are also a group of shadows among Anbu who cannot be underestimated. They are more disciplined and rigorous than ordinary Anbu, and to a certain extent, the rules of action they believe in are absolutely cruel, and it is not an exaggeration to call them assassination machines. But of course, the main reason is probably because of their leader, the one in charge of espionage and conspiracy, Shimura Danzo. That's right, this army is called Root. Spies, intelligence, poisoning, assassinations, outright killings, kidnappings, murders and arson, all kinds of evil. It can be said that what needs to be performed at the Root are all high-risk tasks that cannot be seen in the light. Therefore, if you are in such an organization and do not have heaven-defying luck, you may die early in the task. According to Danzo's previous attitude of being an old god, Konosuke may not be able to escape the fate of being given the title. In this way, his future is simply worrying as his injury has not fully healed. Calm down, I want to calm down. This kind of thing is dangerous and complicated, and it is impossible to forget it all with just a deep breath, but at least such deep breathing does help people think calmly about countermeasures. At present, there are only two roads placed in front of Konosuke. First, find an opportunity to escape. As long as you escape, you will be free and happy. Let's not talk about how he escaped when he was seriously injured at this time. Even if he escaped, Danzo's urine would probably give him 10 names for stealing the sealed book and absconding. If this happens, my good reputation will be completely ruined. Don't forget that Konosuke has killed a lot of Cloud Shinobi on the battlefield before. If nothing else goes wrong, Cloud Shinobi will get the news immediately as soon as he walks away, and then he will be faced with the pursuit of 2 major ninja villages. I am a fledgling. How does a young eagle live? The most important thing is that Shuiran and I haven't even held hands yet. If we just leave like this, how can I be willing to do so? So besides that, the second method is much more straightforward, add Root Diosi to counterattack and kill Danzo for God's sake. Yes, this idea is actually not false, and it still has a certain scientific basis. You must know that Konosuke is up to something. Even though he does not have any powerful ninjutsu or blood succession limits, with the power of the Life Star, Shinosuke still has the strength to compete with elite Chunin and even ordinary Jonin. And more importantly, he was able to resist Cloud Shinobi's attack last time. When Shuiran contacted the soul, Konosuke suddenly discovered that he seemed to have some strange changes. On the battlefield, Konosuke didn't have time to pay too much attention to the feeling that seemed to open up from God's perspective. At that time, he just wanted to use this power to save Shuiran. But now that I think about it, this sight that can actually see through destiny is almost like a bug. You know, this is not just an advanced forbidden technique or blood succession limit, the power system is more like a rule. A rule that only God can master. Under this power, Konosuke packaged and tied his soul and destiny with those of Hyuga Schwerin, and as a result, he forcibly pulled the girl back from her certain death. So, if you really master this ability, then the sentence, first generation, will be more than just an arrogance. This kind of speculation can't help but make Konosuke feel excited. Think about it, compared to all previous ninjutsu, including the power of your own life star, it is only the ability of a mortal. You can see through people's destiny and various rules. If the Hokage world is a huge system, then this ability is more like a virus bug caused by a system crash, or the kind that can modify the program at will. If this explanation is not thorough enough, well, you know about World of Warcraft. There is a skill called Finger of Death. You can gently tap one finger to directly pull the string of fate of the subject regardless of any defense, causing the death of the subject. So, if you master this ability, when you face off against Master Madara in the future, no matter how clever Madara is, you only need to show off your skills and defeat Madara neatly. Wouldn't it be wonderful? However, although this idea is very good, Konosuke encountered some problems. That is, this bug-like ability seemed to be triggered inadvertently. Rather than being a byproduct of the copycat online game, it was more a series of accidents caused by system disorder. Because when he woke up in the ward, Konosuke tried to recreate the scene that day, but was meaningless. He doesn't know how to trigger it at all. And not only that, Konosuke also discovered that since the emergence of that magical power, he and Schwerin were bound to the fate of their souls, and the third life star in his body, the will of the blade, had begun to merge with Aurelia inexplicably, disappeared, replaced by another completely different hero. This can't help but make Konosuke feel a little embarrassed. Could it be that performing that trick requires paying a life star? Konosuke is a little confused about this power system. However, he was not entirely without success. While he was thinking, he quickly browsed through the ninjutsu in the Book of Seals. A series of basic principles of these ninjutsu's seal techniques, activation states, and chakra operation techniques seemed to dissect the entire ninjutsu and completely display it in front of him. Every detail is revealed. Then, regardless of whether it could be used or not, all the information was sealed in Konosuke's mind, like a powerful database that could be recalled at any time and displayed completely in front of him when he wanted to use it. Therefore, Konosuke still gained something this time. At least he found that his brain was much easier to use. No, to be precise, his eyes seemed to be different from before. How to say, if the head is modified into a powerful database, his eyes will be like a powerful scanner. Through scanning and analysis, the things in front of him are turned into data, and at the same time, the brain is linked, and a series of data are transferred to the brain and then decomposed again. Reduction. It's as if he can see through all illusions and get straight to the essence. Of course, it would be better if the number representing the sacrifice points did not drop drastically while using this ability. Obviously, there is no free lunch in the world. When using this ability, which is like Sharingan copying technique, no, even more awesome than Sharingan, you have to continuously consume sacrifice points. This ability is temporarily understood by Konosuke as a bug that unexpectedly appears due to system vulnerabilities and the system is unable to eliminate it, and it is supplemented within the scope of its own authority and ability. It is covered with the skin of regular software but is still a powerful virus. Ability. After correction and supplementation, it may eliminate some heaven-defying options, and without any instructions, no one in Konoha can help him, and he is the only one who really needs to work hard to explore and discover. That's all. Third generation, Danzo, Orochimaru, they may all be very strong, but without exception, they can't help Konosuke in the development of this ability, and of course Konosuke will not tell them. What should I say? Do I have to run up to them and say, something terrible seems to have appeared in my body, do you know about computer viruses? The third generation project may be better, but as for Orochimaru and Danzo, I guess they will be captured and dissected immediately before they finish talking. After all, this kind of ability that does not belong to any system in the ninja world is too shocking. This is simply the power that can only be possessed by gods. But, this is enough, isn't it? As the sacrifice points continued to drop, Konosuke quickly browsed through one ninjutsu after another, regardless of whether it was useful or not, turning them into illusory data and storing them in his mind. Moreover, during the continuous transformation, Konosuke has been silently paying attention to the entire process, and began to constantly figure out the mysteries of this energy system. Some time travelers were given powerful abilities and extraordinary cheats at the beginning of time travel, while others needed detailed explanations and step-by-step teaching. And some people are not willing to work hard to explore even without instructions, and quickly improve their own strength. Obviously Konosuke belongs to the latter group. Instead of enjoying the success and doing nothing, lying there and waiting for death, Konosuke is more willing to give it a go. After Danzo left just now, he now appeared in front of Konosuke again. Looking at the young man holding the sealed book and flipping through it quickly, Danzo couldn't help but feel veins popping out on his head even though he was a top-notch chi cultivator. How can you read books like this? This is a sealed book that records a large number of legendary forbidden techniques. There are many complicated contents in it. Can you remember it if you flip through it so quickly? Is it true that young people still cannot escape from their impetuous and complacent nature? Thinking of this, Danzo couldn't help but feel a hint of disappointment in his eyes. However, the next moment, until someone casually carved a strange spell and jumped directly in front of Danzo from the prison. Danzo was shocked to realize that he had underestimated this boy after all. This is actually the Flying Thunder God technique. Speaking of which, for the many forbidden techniques described in the scrolls of the sealed book, although Konosuke used his special ability to completely analyze and digitize them, and understood all the principles, however, most of them, he still can't use. Either the nature of your chakra is incompatible with you, or the amount of chakra is not enough, or your physique or other factors are not perfect. All in all, although he has read through the entire scroll, the ninjutsu he can use now is basically the multiple shadow clone technique and Flying Thunder God technique. The reason why he learned the Flying Thunder God technique was only because Konosuke himself had Katarina's power of time and space, so it was quite easy for him to learn the Flying Thunder God technique after mastering the basic principles. But Danzo, who didn't know all this, felt a wave of turmoil in his heart. Sure enough, will the world be dominated by young people from now on? Seeing such a talented Konosuke, Danzo couldn't help but feel that he was getting old. Time passed by slowly. After learning ninjutsu, someone starts to have nothing to do. Hey, when will you let me out? At the beginning, Konosuke did not talk to the old guy, probably out of anger and caution, but as time went by, compared to the Anbu around him who looked like a machine and wore a mask, he seemed to be unsmiling. He suddenly realized that it would be more scientific to communicate directly with this guy who could see his face. But everyone knows that Danzo, a person who keeps all his conspiracies and tricks deep in his heart and doesn't talk much, no matter how much nonsense you say around him, they won't even say a single fart. Long periods of solitude can be mentally destructive to a man of words. Until the past 2 days, Konosuke, who was about to go crazy, had begun to give up the possibility of communicating with this guy, and started cursing on his own. The first content was some remarks about this sealed book, and in the end, he became more and more unscrupulous and began to personally attack the innocent old man in front of him without any scruples. In this way, even though Danzo's chi nurturing skills are top-notch, he was almost so angry that he lost his breath several times. Konosuke didn't know if the old guy was secretly cursing him or something, but after getting along with him for so many days, he found that this old guy seemed to treat him differently. In addition to not letting him move around at will, he can do almost anything. And he also has extraordinary patience for some of his unreasonable actions. This is why Konosuke dares to act recklessly. However, this has to be said to be a test, to test Danzo's bottom line. By the way, this 22-year-old guy probably doesn't have any evil thoughts about me, right? However, as soon as this idea appeared, someone shuddered and was quickly thrown out of the sky. Is there any mistake? In the eyes of this old guy, except for the position of Hokage, I am afraid that he will not pay attention to anything else. But if you want to say that there is no conspiracy at all, it doesn't make sense. Otherwise, why would he keep himself locked up here and not let out, and also send him books and help him heal his body and so on? Although it is somewhat unfair to arrange Danzo in this way, Konosuke, who always likes to infer other people's malice, just can't bear to see others being kind to him. It's not that Konosuke himself is cheap, but after arriving in this world, Konosuke has never had a free lunch. Now it seems like he has good luck one after another. Maybe Danzo will try to trick him out of his wits later on. Konosuke doesn't want to be suddenly attacked by Danzo. Therefore, Just like a death row prisoner enjoying his last meal, Mr. Konosuke began another level of torture. The two of them just stared at each other idly, one trying to figure out the other's bad intentions in order to be prepared at any time. The other side is constantly estimating what the opponent is thinking in order to make the next move at any time. In this way, the two of them were watching and contemplating each other. Time seemed to have stopped, and it felt like only these two were left in the world to compete with each other. Of course, Konosuke, who couldn't do anything, just seemed to be having a willpower competition, as if he had forgotten the time. Until the dark door opened, and Anbu came forward and whispered to Danzo. The silent man finally stood up. "You can go now," he said this slowly. "Wah, what?" Happiness came so suddenly that Konosuke was not ready yet. "Yes, you can leave, but don't forget to keep the promise we made." "Why on earth did I keep my promise with you? What's going on with this anticlimactic imprisonment? Are you really kind-hearted and creating a quiet environment for me to learn ninjutsu and recover from my injuries? No, there must be a conspiracy in this. Let's go." The man named Conspiracy waved his hand, as if he no longer had any patience to waste with Konosuke. "There will be no good consequences for those who violate the agreement." "Ah, what do you mean? Are you threatening me?" someone muttered to himself, but his figure was not slow. He didn't want to think about it anymore. "Let's go out first." Speaking of this place that could drive people crazy, he really didn't want to stay for a second longer. Looking at someone slowly disappearing in front of the door, Danzo withdrew his gaze, but this outcome was already planned. "Konosuke, you belong to the root. And you can only belong to the root. As a sealed book that contains many forbidden techniques, who doesn't want to learn the forbidden techniques in it?" However, that sealed book has been staying in Konoha, but how many people have learned even 1.5 of the techniques? However, the boy has almost learned most of the ninjutsu in a short period of time. Some of them cannot be faked. Danzo can also tell this. However, even the development department responsible for the route is not so fast. Yes. This is no longer what the so-called genius can explain. In Danzo's eyes, something called ambition began to burn, and he decided. He seemed to have seen a little bit of the future. This young man will have an unlimited future. The kid in front of me will be the root, no, the key to the rise of Konoha. ... Of course, except for Konosuke, who was strictly monitored, the other two people who returned to Konoha village also received hero-like treatment. The long Second Ninja War caused Konoha to lose too many things, and everyone was looking forward to the end of the war. However, a group of Konoha's genin brats were not afraid of dangers and were willing to use their weak bodies to penetrate deep into the enemy's formation and act as bait, so that Konoha was able to annihilate a large number of Cloud Shinobi's troops, prompting the war to end early. However, the most dazzling among them are the emerging talents Namikaze Minato, Hyuga Yukirin and Orochimaru Sama's adopted son Konosuke. Among them, Namikaze Minato, the Golden Flash, actively evacuated Konoha's wounded regardless of personal safety during Cloud Shinobi's raid, and performed extremely well in the subsequent small-scale battle with Cloud Shinobi. And according to rumors, this kid may have mastered the super powerful time and space ninjutsu left behind by the second generation, Flying Thunder God technique. Hyuga Schwerin, a member of the Hyuga family, faced numerous Cloud Shinobi regardless of personal serious injuries when the Cloud Shinobi assault force arrived, and was unwilling to evacuate, which saved important time for the transfer of the initial injured group. Konosuke, the protagonist of this incident. The heroic figure who led this war to victory. In the early stage, he used his sensitive military vision to see through the root and shortcomings of the entire plan. Unable to get in touch with the frontline command, they resolutely led the team into the battlefield. In order to improve the shortcomings of the plan, they went through all kinds of hardships and finally introduced the main force of Cloud Shinobi into the encirclement. Later, in order to cover the evacuation of the wounded, he was willing to stop and resist the large-scale Cloud Shinobi attack by himself, holding on with his weak body until reinforcements arrived, killing hundreds of enemy troops. His Crimson Flash-like teleportation technique is also defined as AL similar ninjutsu similar to the time and space ninjutsu Flying Thunder God technique. After the other ninja villages received this news, the three top jonin who were originally considered to be only inferior to Sarutobi had not yet taken action. However, Konoha inexplicably had so many young strong men, and they all ordered themselves the village's intelligence officers. Before becoming hostile to Konoha, they must find out how many terrible men are hidden in Konoha village. Then, the name Konosuke began to appear frequently on the information desks of major ninja villages, and this young man began to slowly step onto the stage that belonged to their young people. However, a blacklist is also indispensable. If I had known that if these brats were allowed to grow up, the balance of power in the ninja world would be broken without any suspense, and there would even be a high probability of returning to what it was before the First World War. Status. There are already too many future geniuses in Konoha now, which is not good news for other big countries. In fact, either Madara or Sukma back then had the power to unify the entire ninja world. Without the battle in the Valley of the End, the current ninja world might have become vassals of Konoha. Especially after a series of evaluations, the future achievements of these young men in Konoha may not be weaker than those of their predecessors, especially the young man named Konosuke. All the information shows that this kid is pervert, talent. However, at this time, the person involved who caused the ninja world to panic, Konoha genius Konosuke, did not know about this. At this time, he was walking silently on the way back home. In Konoha Hospital, it was noon at this time, and the warm but not blazing sunlight fell down. For a moment, it seemed that the world in front of him was all pure and bright white. A girl sat quietly in a wheelchair, looking at the garden in front of her, thinking about something. The long black hair naturally hangs down on both sides of the body, and the clean hospital clothes fit her slender body, as if they were worn by her to create a different kind of beauty. The girl's face was calm, and although she didn't have a cold attitude, she still had a hint of aura that made people feel distant. There had been many ninjas who wanted to strike up a conversation before, but they were repelled by the overwhelming aura he exuded and finally walked away. Cloud Shinobi was completely defeated at the front, and victory was only a matter of time, so Hyuga Schwerin and others were transferred back to Konoha to recuperate in a heroic manner. Unlike Minato and others, Hyuga was seriously injured. Although he has improved a lot, he still needs to recover slowly. At this time, her whole person is a little different. Compared with the childish one before, she has now begun to transform into calmness and maturity. She just sat quietly like this. Under the sunlight, her whole body seemed to be shrouded in a faint light, as elegant as water. Minato and others came to visit her before, but there was no sign of Konosuke. Hasn't he returned to the village yet? The girl let out a faint sigh. At this time, 1,000 fallen leaves passed in front of her, but before she got close, an invisible force blew out like wind, silently. The leaf turned into 2 pieces. Yo! A voice came from the side. The girl's figure was startled, and then she turned her head. A certain black-haired boy was standing behind her with a smile on his face. Schwerin, long time no see. That's right, long time no see, Nosuke. The girl's calm smiling face showed a smile for the first time, and she smiled from the bottom of her heart to the boy. The weather is nice today. Yes. The girl was pushed to the garden outside the ward by Kazuki, and she stretched out her slender fingers towards the sun. Tisk. A soft sound came, and when the finger was about to touch the petals, a sharp and invisible sword light came out, instantly splitting the petals in half, and the petals were swaying. It fell from the branches. The girl was a little silent for a moment, as she had not yet fully controlled Aurelia's power. Rows of data-like illusions flashed before Konosuke's eyes. He could clearly see that this invisible sword light resembled Aurelia's power. Konosuke noticed something different about the girl in front of him before. Compared with before, she was much quieter, and her whole person seemed to have a special temperament. It's like 2 people are fused together. He understands what's going on. She knew he would understand. The 2 looked at each other and smiled again, saying nothing. His eyes continued to fall on this pair of boys and girls. One was sitting elegantly and quietly, and the other was standing next to them with a smile on their faces, just like a beautiful picture. They don't talk much, but they all know what the other is thinking. The 2 of them had been getting along quietly like this, communicating with each other. It was not until 10 o'clock in the evening that Konosuke left the hospital and returned to Orochimaru's mansion. It's still the familiar courtyard where Konosuke stayed for several years. From the kid he was to graduating from the ninja school, he used to sweat in this courtyard day and night, practice diligently. The wooden piles in the courtyard have been modeled, and every trace on them is familiar to Konosuke. Since he and Orochimaru have been fighting on the front line, the entire courtyard has not been cleaned, but it looks a bit desolate. However, Konosuke did not start cleaning up immediately, because there were already people waiting there on the corridor in front of the yard. A small table, 2 chairs, a pot of tea, and 2 cups. And the man with an evil look on his face sitting at the table. As if he knew that Konosuke would come back, he just sat at the table, as if waiting for him, and seemed to be drinking tea. Someone came to the table without saying a word, sat down slowly, and then picked up the cup that belonged to him. The tea is still hot. Have you gone to Konoha Hospital? Orochimaru's voice came, no longer hoarse but unusually clear. Konosuke responded, knowing that none of this could be hidden from Orochimaru. He was considering another issue at this time. If he and Shuiran were together, where should they live in the future? Orochimaru's eyes flickered, a smile slowly formed on the corner of his mouth, but he seemed to have made some kind of decision in his heart. Oh, right, someone suddenly said as if he thought of something. Danzo went to see me. I know. Orochimaru took a sip of tea and was extremely calm, as if he understood everything. However, this sentence made Konosuke's eyes narrow. He knew some of the plot, but he secretly thought in his heart that Uncle Snake had probably begun to reach some agreement with Danzo. Then, Konosuke looked at Uncle Snake and couldn't help but have a flash of worry. I'm afraid that Uncle Snake has already begun to head towards the road of no return in the future. Just follow your own feelings. People will always face different choices, but in the end they have to bear the consequences. This sentence seemed to be said to Konosuke, and you seemed to say it to himself. I understand. Konosuke took another sip of tea. The tea was different from Chinese tea, but it had a different feeling. While it was constantly washing his soul, it also made him make a certain decision. I know what to do. Orochimaru looked at the young man in front of him calmly. The training on the battlefield had made him mature too much. He was almost an adult, and the childishness he had when he first came to Konoha made people feel like they were in another world. A smile appeared at the corner of Orochimaru's mouth, and he immediately stood up. When he walked to Konosuke's side, he left something behind. Ah, Li Chenjiao. Konosuke looked at the thing in front of him, a little stunned. Let this be your coming-of-age gift. From today on, get out of my house and start your own life. Orochimaru had an inexplicable smile on his face. You have no use value anymore, Konosukeomi. For some reason, when he heard this sentence, someone felt moved for no reason. He looked at Orochimaru blankly, and then bowed deeply. Orochimaru accepted it calmly. No matter it was for anything else, the property he just put on the table was enough to accept such courtesy from Konosuke. Looking at the figure dragging his belongings out of the mansion gate, Orochimaru seemed to be staring at the strongest ninja who was slowly making his way to the top. Konosuke. You are different from me, our paths are different. The property presented by Orochimaru is located in the prosperous area of Konoha and is not small in size. If it were placed in a property like this in future generations, it would probably require someone to devote most of his life to it. Uncle Snake is always rich. Someone sighed inexplicably while carrying his luggage. But at this time, 3 little ghosts made a noise and rushed over. One of the little ghosts wearing windproof goggles did not pay attention and fell on Konosuke's body. Hey, kid, watch the road carefully. Someone staggered after being hit, and the luggage on his back almost fell to the ground. The naughty children are the most annoying. Someone thought helplessly. I'm sorry. One of the 3 girls came forward and apologized hastily. Ah, yeah, forget it then. However, at this time, a whirring sound came from the side. Hey, aren't you the red light's helper? The kid wearing windproof goggles shouted in shock. He couldn't believe his eyes. Idle. Ah, Konosuke was stunned. Does this brat know about me? Has my reputation spread throughout the ninja world? Ah, it's him. The girl carefully identified for a moment, but she also let out an exclamation. I heard that he faced the Cloud Shinobi army alone for his lover, and he refused to take a step back even though he was seriously injured. Speaking of the poignant love story on the battlefield, it is simply not too lethal for my sister-in-law Liang, who is dreaming of pure love at this age. Can one person kill hundreds of Cloud Shinobi? And there are many Chunin among them. The last white-haired masked boy thought to himself, but when he looked at Shinobi, he was exuding an infinite energy, yearning. Ah ha ha ha, these are nothing. Someone couldn't bear the praise of others, and the appearance of these brats seemed to come from the heart. For a moment, his heart swelled, but he felt a little embarrassed. You are so humble. Sign your name for me. Kinosuke-sama. Don't you look down upon such an impressive record. Another burst of heartfelt praise came, and someone was almost drunk. Sure enough, children have the purest minds. I like children the most. Someone suddenly changed some of his previous opinions. It's decided. I will definitely be called a great man like Lord Kinosuke from now on. Only you. Kinosuke-sama is so handsome. Ah ha ha ha, easy to say, easy to say. Someone has fallen into a sea of praise. The news on the front line is driven by the ninjas who travel to the village and the battlefield. As soon as one message after another is confirmed, it will be quickly spread widely. Promote. At this time, it was Konoha's two geniuses who were most in the limelight. Kinosuke and Namikaze Minato. Having mastered the Flying Thunder God technique, Minato's powerful performance on the battlefield is undeniable. Coupled with his handsome appearance and sunny expression, he quickly became the popular lover of thousands of girls and was favored by a large number of female ninjas. However, this also made Kushina very angry and irritable. And Kinosuke, this talented boy, is no less than Minato. His performance on the battlefield is even better than Minato, whether it is the time and space ninjutsu similar to the Flying Thunder God or a series of powerful blood succession limits, it belongs to him. Achievements shine especially brightly. Moreover, in order to evacuate the wounded and protect the girl behind him, Kazuo faced hundreds of Cloud Shinobi. This move undoubtedly pushed his reputation to the highest peak and received a lot of support and praise. So many female ninjas secretly envied Hyuga Schwerin, and secretly wondered why they could not meet such a good man. This is the most popular topic in Konoha. However, there was another event that could be considered a major event. That's a dead end. It was after Kinosuke successfully blocked Cloud Shinobi that Tsunade discovered that the enemy CCFF Jonin was not sniping at him and was dying. Perhaps in Konoha, the death of a Jonin or something is far less explosive than the discovery of a genius. The deceased will only disappear silently from everyone's sight amid the grief of those close to him. However, this Jonin is very special. Others may not know it very well, but Kinosuke, who is familiar with the plot, understands very well that the death of this man will cause a certain powerful ninja to leave the village. Probably not long after, Tsunade will quietly leave Konoha with his only niece. However, these have nothing to do with Kinosuke. Someone is almost in danger now, so who will care about these tidbits? Kinosuke is now shrouded in a dark cloud called Danzo. Thinking of this, Kinosuke lost interest. Looking at the familiar appearances of the three people in front of him, he slowly put down the package on his back and squatted in front of them. He slowly placed his hand on the first child's head. Feeling the child's suddenly bewildered gaze, he slowly opened his mouth, and an inexplicable air of pretentiousness spread across Kai Bao. Your future achievements will make the entire ninja world tremble. Then came the second imp. You're going to be the Hokage. And you. He looked at the girl with expectation in her eyes. You have made their future. Saying this, he stood up without saying a word, picked up his luggage, and left the little devils who were still in a state of confusion, without moving their heads. As the sun set, his long back appeared on the street, and for a moment he was full of force and mystery. Hey, hey, hey. Kakashi, did you hear that? Crimson Flash said that I will be powerful in the ninja world in the future. From behind came the boy's ecstatic cheers, as if he was being recognized by others. With a crane like yours. Another boy's questioning voice came. Obviously, he had certain opinions on Kinosuke's life. Asshole Kakashi, don't look down on people. How can someone like you become a Hokage in the future? I don't believe it. I am the one who must become a Hokage. I'm confused too. Seeing the two boys bickering in front of her, Nohara Lin stared at Kinosuke's back in a daze. You make their future. This sentence was always lingering in Lin's mind like a magic barrier. How can that be possible? Although Kakashi is very talented and may really become Hokage in the future, he and Obito. From his words, it seems that everyone will have extraordinary achievements in the future. But how is this possible? But the other party is crimson and shining. His words should Thinking about Kinosuke's words with such contradiction in her heart, Lin fell into confusion again. There was wind and sand all over the place, and the sun was scorching. This is the unique climate of the Kingdom of Wind. You've been chasing me all day and night, don't go too far. A ninja wearing the unique costume of the Kingdom of Wind shouted angrily at a small sandbag somewhere. I can't help it. I'm planning to get married, but I don't have a house or a car, and money is very tight. A figure stepped out from behind the sandbags, explaining calmly. He was wearing the unique costume of Konoha Anbu, but he had a fox mask on his face. Seeing that the prey stopped running away, he couldn't help but stop. Asshole, you have no money, what does it have to do with me? The sand ninja roared again and seemed to have an extremely hot temper. Kawasaki, Sunagaku ninja, Chunin strength, but it is said that he can use his own special secret skills on the sand and was promoted to a special jonin. But recently, he often wanders around the border between the land of fire and the land of wind, responsible for transmitting some special information. A unique voice came from his mask, so, congratulations, the reward for your mission is very high. Today is my first mission in this department, please cooperate with me. Asshole, the devil has to cooperate with you. I have never seen such a talkative Anbu. Kawasaki gasped hard to calm down his irritable heart. Immediately, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Since you know that I am good at fighting in the sand, then are you so defenseless in this desert? An inexplicable wave came out, as if the sand under his feet came to life. When Anbu noticed it, he found that the sand under his feet was slowly sinking. Feeling like a swamp, the yellow sand land without any leverage is even more terrifying and dangerous. Did you use the time you just spoke to inject chakra into the sand to create quicksand in the lower layer? Anbu analyzed it calmly, but he didn't show the slightest hint of lying that he was in danger. Didn't you say that you have the secret technique of fighting in special areas? This kind of quicksand is something that all sand ninjas know. Then Anbu pointed at Kawasaki, but he was a little skeptical. Have you seen your surroundings? Kawasaki pointed to the sand under his feet. Unlike the quicksand used by ordinary ninjas, the area of quicksand under his feet was surprisingly large. Due to my special physique, as long as I am within the range of the sand, the chakra I consume when using ninjutsu is much less than that of ordinary sand ninjas. This kind of plot of actively telling the enemy about one's weaknesses is really making people complain. Anbu shook his head and sighed. In the plot, the powerful villains were overtaken and killed by the 12 strong men. Most of the reasons were this. Kawasaki burst out with a sneer, don't you think you can escape? Or, you think I didn't see through your little trick? As he said that, a stream of yellow sand rolled up from the ground but ignored the Anbu and rushed directly to an open space. You actually saw it. A figure emerged from the sand, but it was too late. The yellow sand grabbed his leg and was eaten away bit by bit. Sand-bound coffin. The sand ball shrank suddenly, but it was as if it was squeezed from the outside by invisible energy, and the whole ball shrank from the outside inward. Konoha is getting more and more alive, how can such a person be recruited into Anbu? A disdainful smile appeared on Kawasaki's lips, and then he couldn't help but increase the strength on his hands. Poof! A rather joyful voice came from the ball of sand, and then a large amount of white smoke came out. Clone, this is natural, came a leisurely voice. You're so messed up, how can you use your own body as bait? Kawasaki was furious and flew up a stream of yellow sand again, but it wrapped up the already sunk Konoha Anbu with only his head left. Sand-bound coffin. PFF'd. There was another joyous voice. That one is also a clone. Ridiculous words came from the side. Sand coffin. Puff. Sand-bound coffin. Sand-bound coffin. Sand. Puff 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 puff. A series of sounds of clones being broken came, and Kawasaki was already out of breath. How could there be so many clones? This is multiple shadow clone technique. A crimson light flashed, and the voice seemed to be heard in his ears. You are from Konoha, Crimson Flash. Seeing this crimson light, a look of horror appeared on Kawasaki's face. That was a fierce man who fought hundreds of cloud shinobi in World War II without retreating. His name is in almost every ninja manual. Sand ninja from the Kingdom of Wind, have you ever heard of a sword technique that falls from the sky? He said this, as if coming from a Shinigami Sai. What is that? Kawasaki was stunned for a moment. Then a huge sword slashed down from above them. Boom! A burst of sand and dust flew. Ahem! Kawasaki lay on the ground, but had no strength to fight anymore. Why? He was a little confused. Since it is Konoha's Scarlet Flash, why not end my life from the beginning? He believed that with the other party's strength, he could definitely kill him easily before he noticed it, instead of silently following him behind him for 3 days. That's because, on the one hand, I want to appreciate the natural scenery of this desert, and on the other hand, I have been thinking about how to kill you. Anbu stretched out his hand and killed Kawasaki under Kawasaki's rather painful gaze. Then he found a scroll from his body and kicked it into his arms. The fox mask was finally gently taken off, revealing Kinosuke's rather handsome face. Bah, who on earth stipulated that Genbu can't take off his mask when performing tasks? Such a hot day is killing me. Someone cursed and stretched out his hand to Kawasaki. By the way, this is his first sacrifice after returning from the battlefield. A white light point quickly dissipated, but this time the sacrifice points that followed did not appear. Sacrifice to obtain points, 023, or obtain a random item. Kinosuke was a little confused and looked at his hands blankly. This was the first time he heard such a different sound after the sacrifice. Get items, he thought blankly, and then the smile on his lips became happier and happier. This is simply heaven-defying. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye it has been 1 year since the end of the Second Ninja War. Konohagakure, Kinosuke's mansion. The new mansion is no different from the previous one. It occupies a large area and has an excellent location. However, it also highlights how wealthy Uncle Snake is who bought this property. Kinosuke usually sat on the stone steps of the corridor and stared at the scenery in the courtyard in a daze. This seemed to have become a habit for him. The yard was filled with various flowers and plants by Hyuga, who came from time to time. Even the entire scenery was redesigned, which gave a vague hostess attitude. The weather was a bit gloomy, and the pattering light rain fell silently, but it brushed a layer of dust off the courtyard. The green became greener, the red became redder, and the whole thing was coated in bright colors. The young man on the stone steps looked at the rainy scene blankly, just like the young man who once lived in Orochimaru's mansion, but the only difference is that he has matured a lot and grown a lot taller. He stared at his hands in a daze, as if silently thinking about something, when suddenly an ordinary-looking Chinese sword appeared in his hands. Dolan's Blade. +3 attack power, +10 health, +1% life steal. Can be stacked. Kinosuke looked at the Doran sword with a depressed expression. Ever since that bug appeared, there would always be one more question in his mind when he was sacrificing the dead. Choose points, or choose items. The randomness of the items is divided into categories, but they are all basic items in the game. At first, someone was excited. You must know that the Fanatic Armor, Sunfire Cloak, Thorn Armor and other items in the game are different from the green vests in this world. They not only represent a cool appearance, but also have a large number of attribute bonuses that ordinary ninja tools, including items, do not have. The Thunder God Sword of 2nd generation is powerful, it is called a divine weapon. However, except for the appearance of the laser sword and the slight bonus to some attributes, in Kinosuke's eyes it is not as good as a Doran sword. Someone who thinks he should be able to draw a divine costume is like a gambler, and almost all of a year's sacrifice is wasted on it. Friends who have played web games all know how tricky the lottery is. It is said that there is a certain chance of drawing a peerless magic weapon or a holy pet, but it turns out that even if you spend 10,000 or 20,000 krypton, you may not draw anything useful. Alas, someone sighed, moved his palms again, and another Dolan sword appeared. Dolan's Blade. +6 attack power, +15 health, +2% life steal. Can be stacked. When I collect all 5 Doran swords, I should be able to become a super god. A smile appeared on someone's lips, and then the 2 Doran swords disappeared into his palms. These are the 6 equipment slots he opened when he selected items for the first time. It contains 3 Doran swords he carefully selected, a Doran ring and a bottle of life potion. After that bug, do you feel like you are becoming more and more like a hero in the game? Kinosuke joined Root a year ago, and has completed nearly 100 missions of all sizes for Root. No matter how harsh the conditions are, almost every time the Vice Admiral mission is completed with near perfection, and in the past few missions, almost every time unscathed. This is absolutely terrifying. You must know that the root mission is different from the hierarchical missions accepted by ordinary ninjas. The danger of licking blood from the blade is even more dangerous than that of Konoha Anbu. However, this Konoha genius boy who is still underage can complete the game at every time with almost no injuries. It can only be said that his talent can no longer be explained by terror. In the root secret room, the mainly cold and dim color seems to perfectly interpret everything here. The dim candlelight swayed, just like the human heart, silent and dark. There is silence here, people come and go here. And in the deepest part of the secret room, Danzo's seat is right there. Master Danzo. This person has great potential. If he is allowed to grow like this without control, maybe in the future. Control. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.